Chapter 315. Yusin. Su Yusin stood there. He was a 17 or 18-year-old boy with a childish face. But he could already foresee what he would look like when he grew up. Sister Junjio. Su Yusin grabbed Chio Junjio's hand. He didn't use much force, but Chio Junjio couldn't break free at all. No matter what, this is our Su family's banquet. You hit someone at our Su family's banquet. Are you looking down on our Su family? Chio Junjio's face turned cold. She glared at Su Yusin. I hit someone. Why didn't you see what she did? I saw it. Su Yusin let go of Chio Junjio's hand and took a step back, standing in front of Su Qingsang. But I saw what you did too. Su Qingsang looked at Su Yusin, touched. She wasn't afraid of Chio Junjio hitting her. If she really hit her, she wouldn't be able to avoid it. Even if she couldn't, she had ways to protect herself. But Su Yusin's protection warmed her. She looked at Su Yusin gratefully. Li Qianxue, who was in the distance, happened to see this scene, and her shrewd eyes flashed with sharpness. Su Qinghui and Hu Jinyao had gone to the study with Old Master Li and weren't there. Su Peijian saw it too. Her face darkened, her hand holding the cup clenched into a fist. What do you mean? Chio Junjio didn't miss the looks from the people around her. The Chio family and the Su family were old friends, but Su Yusin was humiliating her. Nothing. Su Yusin's voice was soft. Sister Junjio, your clothes are wet. Why don't you go upstairs and change? You, Sister Junjio. Su Yusin took a step forward as he spoke. My second brother-in-law isn't here now. If he comes down later and sees my sister like this, what do you think he will do? He said this very softly, leaning against Chio Junjio. Chio Junjio immediately understood what he meant. Her face turned pale. You, Su Yusin smiled. Chio Junjio couldn't lose her temper. She stomped her feet and turned to leave. Su Yusin sighed after she left. He saw Su Peijian's unhappy face from afar. He touched his nose and turned to look at Su Qingsang. Second sister, are you all right? I'm fine. Thank you. Su Qingsang smiled at him gratefully. Su Yusin stared at the puddle of juice stains on her clothes. Second sister, go upstairs and change your clothes. All right. Su Qingsang nodded. Before she could go upstairs, Old Master Li led Su Qinghui and Hu Jinyao downstairs. Hu Jinyao noticed Su Qingsang's condition and frowned. He quickly walked up to Su Qingsang. His eyes fell on the obvious stain on her chest. There was no playfulness in his eyes. What happened? Nothing. Su Qingsang shook her head. I accidentally knocked over a glass of juice. Accidentally knocking over a glass of juice. Hu Jinyao looked around and finally looked at Su Qingsang. The serious look on his face disappeared, and he took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped it on her clothes. Why are you so careless? Su Qingsang seemed to be a little embarrassed, but Hu Jinyao didn't mind. He looked at the stain that obviously couldn't be wiped clean and frowned. I can't clean it. Let's go back. All right. She had been here and been in the limelight. She really didn't want to stay here anymore. Chapter 316. Let's go. Hu Jinyao paused for a moment as he spoke. He took off his suit jacket and put it on Su Qingsang. Before leaving, he didn't forget to bid farewell to Old Master Li with Su Qingsang. After getting into the car, Hu Jinyao turned on the air conditioner and raised the temperature. Are you cold? I'm not cold. Hu Jinyao nodded and casually said, your brother is not bad. Yusin. Su Qingsang paused for a moment, then nodded. Yes. Yes, Yusin is not bad. He shouldn't know what just happened, right? He shouldn't know, right? Looking at the road ahead, Hu Jinyao thought that Su Qinghui was a good man. Although Su Peijian wasn't much, Su Yusin looked like a promising talent. He would probably be a good opponent when he grew up. How is your relationship with him? Not bad. Their relationship wasn't that good before, but after what happened last time, their relationship had become much closer. That's good. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao and felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words. However, he didn't think too much about it. Actually, Yusin is quite pitiful. Pitiful? How is he pitiful? My dad said that boys need to gain experience, so we didn't move out until we were in university. Only Su Yusin lived on campus in junior high. Although he can come back on the weekends, my dad has arranged a lot of homework for him during the winter and summer holidays. These homework naturally referred to some business matters. It could be seen that Su Qinghui valued his son very much, but he was also very strict with him. Hu Jinyao was focused on driving, thinking about Su Qingsang's words. Xiang Kaiping woke up early that morning. When she saw Su Qingsang, she smiled brightly. Qingsang, you're awake. Morning. It's getting late. Xiang Kaiping walked over with a smile and took Su Qingsang's hand. Qingsang, happy birthday. Thank you. I cooked a bowl of longevity noodles for you. Eat before you go to work. Sure. Su Qingsang did not refuse. When she saw the genuine concern in Xiang Caiping's eyes, she only felt very warm. Thank you, Auntie. Silly child, what are you thanking me for? The two of them went to the dining room together. Xiang Kaiping brought out the noodles. After today, Qingsang will be 1 year older. I wish you good health and safety. Thank you, Auntie. Su Qingsang was a little touched. She sat down on the chair and looked at the bowl of steaming noodles. Her nose suddenly felt a little sour. Using the excuse of eating noodles, she lowered her head and blinked her eyes, trying her best to hold back the urge to cry. How does it taste? I rolled it myself. I don't know if you'll like it. Xiang Kaiping spoke carefully, but there was a hint of sadness in her voice. Her daughter was already so big, but she had never celebrated her birthday with her. Speaking of which, Xiang Caiping's heart was filled with self-blame and regret. He regretted that he shouldn't have been angry with Su Qinghui. He regretted not taking Su Qingsang with him. Even if it was tough and tiring, at least her daughter was still by her side. Su Qingsang kept her head down. This was the first time she had tasted the noodles made by her mother. Most importantly, she didn't have to spend this birthday alone anymore. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang suddenly raised her head. Auntie, where's Hu Jinyao? I don't know. He left early in the morning. Chapter 317. After eating the noodles, Xiang Kaiping saw that Su Qingsang still had to go out. It's your birthday today. Why do you have to go to work? Yeah. It's not the weekend, and it's not New Year's Day. Su Qingsang put on her coat and smiled when she met Xiang Caiping's indignant gaze. It's okay. What's the big deal about going to work? When I was a graduate student, I stayed in the hospital for a week to do a research project. I didn't even have a holiday on New Year's Day, not to mention my birthday. The heartache on Xiang Caiping's face became even more obvious. Su Qingsang also realized that she had said the wrong thing. She stepped forward and hugged Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, thank you for today. Xiang Kaiping hugged Su Qingsang tightly before letting go. Okay, go to work. I'll cook something delicious for you when you come back. Okay. Su Qingsang nodded. The moment she turned around, she made a decision in her heart. The hospital was busy every day, even though it was just Christmas yesterday. At noon, there was a car accident 2 streets away from the hospital. The car accident caused serious injuries to 7 or 8 people. One of them was a pregnant woman. As soon as Su Qing-sang stepped into the office, she forgot about her birthday. Especially after receiving the pregnant woman. She followed Director Zhang, Director Chen, and 2 other doctors in the operating room for a few hours. Finally, they succeeded in saving the pregnant woman and the child. When she came out of the operating room, Su Qing-sang was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back. Still, she finished the surgery report and handed over all her work. Before leaving work, she took out her phone and saw that there were more than a dozen missed calls. Except for one from Xiang Kaiping, the rest were from Hua Jinyao. Just as she was about to call Hua Jinyao back, a large bouquet of roses suddenly appeared in front of her. Su Qing-sang was stunned for a moment. There were a total of 999 red roses, delicate and beautiful. In the middle, there were yellow roses arranged in the shape of a heart. There was a card inside. The flowers were so big that they covered the face of the person who sent them. Before Su Qing-sang could react, she heard a male voice that she was now very familiar with. "Happy birthday, wife." She looked up and saw Hua Jinyao's smiling face behind the roses. "Wife, happy birthday. Do you like it?" He put the bouquet in front of Su Qing-sang. Because the flowers were so big, Su Qing-sang couldn't even hug them completely. "I like it." Su Qing-sang noticed that many people were looking at her as she spoke. She blushed and said, "I can get off work after changing. Give me a moment." Su Qing-sang changed her clothes and came out with Hua Jinyao, who was holding a large bouquet of roses. Along the way, they attracted a lot of attention. She was not used to being the center of attention. His footsteps were quick, and he only felt a little better when he got on the car. "Honey, if you look so guilty, people will think we're having an affair." Su Qing-sang glared at Hua Jinyao. Who's feeling guilty? If he hadn't given her such a big bouquet of flowers, she wouldn't have attracted so much attention. "Wife. Don't forget. We are a married couple." Hua Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. "All right, honey, let's go eat. Aren't you eating at home?" Then. What about Xiang Kaiping? She was still waiting to celebrate her birthday with him. "Don't worry, I've already asked Wen Chang to pick Auntie up." On the other hand, Xiang Kaiping had already been brought to Chaoan Courtyard by Yang Wen Chang. Hua Jinyao had made a reservation for dinner. Chapter 318. When Su Qing-sang walked in, Xiang Kaiping had been waiting for a few minutes. Su Qing-sang was a little embarrassed. "Auntie, have you waited long?" "It's fine. I'm old anyway. It's nothing." Xiang Kaiping stood up with a smile. "Auntie, take a seat. We're family anyway." Hua Jinyao knew Su Qing-sang well. She didn't need to invite a bunch of irrelevant people to celebrate her birthday. As long as the family had a simple meal together, it would be fine. Su Qing-sang nodded. The 3 of them sat down and ordered. The waiter left after serving the tea. Xiang Kaiping took out a box from her bag and put it in front of Su Qing-sang. "This is my birthday present for you." "Thank you, Auntie." Su Qing-sang took it and didn't rush to open it. "Auntie, you don't have to be so polite. You already gave me my birthday present this morning." "Of course not." "Why not?" "That bowl of noodles is one. That's too light." Xiang Kaiping waved her hand. "Look, in the past 20 years, I haven't celebrated your birthday properly, and I haven't bought you a present." Auntie." Su Qingsang couldn't help but hold Xiang Caiping's hands. It's all in the past. The way things are now is pretty good. Xiang Caiping's lips moved. She wanted to say something, but she felt that whatever she said would be useless. Finally, she pointed at the box. Take a look and see if you like it. Su Qingsang opened the gift. It was a set of jewelry. Necklace, earrings, rings. The diamond wasn't particularly big, and it couldn't compare to the one that Hu Jinyao had sold for tens of millions of yuan. But it was small and exquisite, looking very elegant. She could tell that Xiang Caiping had put a lot of thought into this gift. Thank you, Auntie. I like it very much. It's good that you like it. As long as you like it. As Xiang Caiping spoke, she took out another velvet box. This is my wedding present for you. According to the rules of Lin City, when a girl gets married, her mother has to give her gold jewelry. I wasn't there when you got married. This is the perfect time to make up for it. Su Qingsang looked at the box and felt her nose sting. Actually, you don't have to. Of course, of course. Xiang Caiping smiled and tried to please her. I'm afraid this young man won't even wear it. But it was just for a festive and auspicious occasion. I hope you won't mind. How could that be? I like it very much. Thank you, Auntie. This was Xiang Caiping's kind gesture. Su Qingsang could only feel grateful. How could she dislike it? The atmosphere during the meal was very good. Su Qingsang watched as Xiang Caiping kept putting food into her bowl with a guilty look on her face. Her mood was a little complicated. Thinking about the decision he made this morning. She casually scooped a bowl of soup for Xiang Caiping and said, Mom, this soup is good. It's good for your skin. Drink more. All right. Xiang Caiping nodded. Suddenly, her hand that was holding the chopsticks trembled. What did you call me? Hu Jinyao had already guessed that such a day would come, so he wasn't surprised at all. Su Qingsang picked up some food for Xiang Caiping and said, Mom, you eat. Xiang Caiping's eyes reddened, and her hands trembled. Su Qingsang was also a little uncomfortable. Although it didn't seem to take much time to take that step, she knew that Xiang Caiping was really trying to make it up to her. She wasn't entirely at fault for what happened back then. Su Qingsang wasn't a hard-hearted person. She had seen Xiang Caiping's care for her during this period of time. Chapter 319. Mom, let's eat. It won't be good if the food gets cold. Xiang Caiping was now sure that Su Qingsang had accepted her. The corners of her eyes were wet. Hu Jinyao saw her like that and also spoke. Mom, today is Qingsang's birthday. We should be happy. Yes. I'm happy. Xiang Caiping rubbed the corners of her eyes and looked at Su Qingsang with relief. Not only had she accepted her daughter, but she had also accepted her son-in-law. She was very excited and couldn't calm down at all. Although she tried her best to control it, the red corners of her eyes still revealed her current emotions. I'll go to the bathroom. Xiang Caiping got up and left in a hurry. Hu Jinyao didn't have time to remind her that there was a bathroom in the private room. In a private room not far away, Su Qinghui was being toasted by two business partners. Boss Su, you guys are great now. But don't forget small companies like us. Yes. We should make money together. It's good that everyone gets rich together. Yes. The group of people couldn't curry favor with Hu Jinyao, but they tried their best to get in touch with Su Qinghui. This time, Tianyu Group was making a big move. Not only the Li family, but the Chiu family and two other good families were also partners of Tianyu Group. However, those of lower status than these families didn't even get to drink soup, not to mention meat. The group of people wanted to get in touch with Hu Jinyao and then get in touch with him. But Hu Jinyao didn't want to see them at all. Now that they saw Su Qinghui, they naturally tried to curry favor with him. Su Qinghui didn't compliment this group of people like he used to. He was a little lost in thought. When they mentioned Hu Jinyao, he was also thinking about this son-in-law. This Hu Jinyao, yesterday, Qiu Junjiu only drank a glass of wine to Su Qingsang. That morning, Hu Jinyao gave Su Qinghui a project that was originally in charge of the Qiu family. The reason was obvious. Hu Jinyao was avenging Su Qingsang. After Su Peixian's incident, Su Peixian and the Su family had a good attitude. Taking a step back, wasn't it because Su Yusin helped Su Qingsang at the banquet yesterday? Their company has a new project, but he is not happy at all. He never knew that Hu Jinyao, as the CEO of a large corporation, could be so casual. He was so casual that it made him gnash his teeth. Su Qinghui rubbed the space between his eyebrows and his smile stiffened. I'm going out to make a call. Do as you please. After leaving the private room, Su Qinghui didn't really want to make a call. His hand went to his pocket, and he wanted to take out a cigarette to smoke. Then he remembered that he had quit smoking for many years. Just as he was about to return to his private room, he caught sight of a figure not too far away from him. The existence of that figure stunned him. When Xiang Kaiping came out, she remembered that she had ordered a cake and left it at the front desk as a surprise for Su Qingsang. She personally brought the cake over, thinking that today was the first day she was celebrating her daughter's birthday with her. She was very excited. She walked towards the private room with the cake in her hand. When she was less than 3 meters away from the door, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Kaiping. Is that you? Xiang Kaiping was stunned. She almost dropped the cake in her hand. Before she could react, the voice behind her increased in pitch. Chapter 320. When Xiang Kaiping saw the familiar face that appeared in front of her, which was almost exactly the same as the face in her memory, she was completely stunned. The cake in her hand fell to the ground. The smacking sound didn't make her come back to her senses. She just stared at Su Qinghui in a daze. Su Qinghui also looked at Xiang Kaiping. Compared to his 20 years of pampered life, Xiang Kaiping had obviously gone through more ups and downs. She had aged a lot and was no longer as gentle and beautiful as she was when she was young. But he still recognized her at a glance. In addition to shock, there was more sadness in his eyes. Kaiping. Kaiping. You. How did you become like this? They had been separated for too long. In Su Qinghui's heart, even though Xiang Caiping's facial features were blurred, he still remembered her most beautiful appearance. His words brought Xiang Kaiping back to her senses. She looked at the man in front of her, whom she had loved and thought about all her life. The corners of her lips curled helplessly, revealing a bitter smile. Yes. I've become like this. When she returned to Lin City, she already knew that she would meet Su Qinghui sooner or later. But she always felt that that day would not come so soon. She always felt that when that day came, she must have made all the preparations. But she didn't expect that day to come so soon, and so unexpectedly. She originally wanted to leave quickly and escape, but now she couldn't escape. She stood there and stared at Su Qinghui. I'm already old. 5 simple words made Su Qinghui almost unable to stand. His hands, which were hanging by his side, were trembling. Yes, Xiang Kaiping was old. She was completely different from 20 years ago. She had changed so much that he almost didn't dare to recognize her. Kaiping. You. Su Qinghui tried his best to control himself, but he still didn't dare to look at Xiang Caiping's face. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself. Where have you been all these years? Have you had a good life? Good. Or not good? But these two answers were difficult to explain. Xiang Caiping shook her head. It's all in the past. It's all in the past. How could it not be difficult for a woman to do business alone? How could it be good? However, things had changed in the past, so there was no need to bring it up again. She didn't say it, but Su Qinghui knew that it was difficult. He felt a lump in his throat. Why didn't you come to me? I looked for you. I looked everywhere for you. So what if we find it? Xiang Caiping retorted, you're already married and have children. What would you do if you found me? Su Qinghui was speechless. At this moment, he couldn't say a word. That was right. In the past 20 years, even if he had gone to look for Xiang Caiping, he only wanted to know if she was doing well. But even if he had found her, what could he do? He was Su Qinghui, Li Qianchua's husband. He was the general manager of the Li Corporation. Su Qinghui's eyes felt even more sore than before. He took a step forward and stood in front of Xiang Caiping. Caiping, listen to me. I can, don't say it. Xiang Caiping knew what he was going to say. Qinghui, don't say anything you can't do. 20 years ago, he couldn't. 20 years later, she didn't believe that he could do it. Su Qinghui, who had been in the business world for a long time, understood what she meant. He was stunned. Yes, he still had the same concerns back then. Not only did he have them, but he also had more concerns. Caiping, Mom. Chapter 321. Su Qinghui froze for a moment and quickly turned his face. He realized that it was Su Qingsang. He was stunned and watched in a daze as she walked towards Xiang Caiping. Mom. After Su Qingsang called Xiang Caiping, she glanced at Su Qinghui. Dad. Why was he here? Why are you here? Su Qinghui looked even more surprised than her. He looked at her and then at Xiang Caiping. Qinghui, let bygones be bygones. Now, I am very satisfied. Xiang Caiping looked at Su Qingsang as she spoke. Her hands were clasped together, and she seemed to be at a loss. Qingsang, I wanted to get you a cake. This isn't. Su Qingsang saw it just now, and she also saw Su Qinghui. She didn't expect to run into Su Qinghui when she was just out for a meal. She looked at the two people in front of her, who had different expressions on their faces, and then looked at the cake on the floor. It's okay. The box is quite thick. It doesn't look broken. Su Qingsang went forward and picked up the cake again. She looked at Xiang Caiping again. Mom, Su Qinghui only saw the cake now and remembered. Qingsang, is today your birthday? When Su Qingsang was facing Su Qinghui, she was not as close and comfortable as she was with Xiang Caiping. Yes. Today is my birthday. Su Qinghui suddenly stood there, because he saw Xiang Caiping's eyes full of shock and disbelief. He was speechless for a moment. Mom. Su Qingsang sensed that the atmosphere was not right. She raised the cake in her hand. Ji Niao is probably still waiting for me. You guys go ahead and chat. I'll go in first. As she spoke, she glanced at Su Qinghui again and hurried in the direction of the private room. Xiang Caiping hadn't recovered from the question just now. She stared at Su Qinghui, and the shock in her eyes slowly turned to disappointment. You don't know that today is your daughter's birthday. It was just one sentence, but Xiang Caiping could already tell a lot from it. She thought about the family photo, about Su Qinghui standing next to Li Qianxue with a faint smile on his face, about his children. She thought of Su Qingsang's birthday today. Only Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang were here. And she saw the grand banquet in Su Yusin's photos, the scene of beautiful clothes and hair. It was her daughter's birthday, but it was cold and cheerless. How could Su Qinghui, her biological father, not even know his daughter's birthday? Kaiping. There was a flash of panic in Su Qinghui's eyes. He wanted to explain. Su Qinghui. Xiang Kaiping pursed her lips into a straight line. Her face, which was no longer young, was now filled with disappointment, blame, regret, and guilt. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I should have brought her along. I should have carried her away. I shouldn't have given her to you. Kaiping, listen to me. Xiang Kaiping didn't want to hear it. Today was her daughter's birthday. Today, Su Qingsang had just acknowledged her and called her mother. She was going to accompany her daughter now. Kaiping. President Su, why did the call take so long? At this time, someone in the private room came out to look for Su Qinghui. He seemed to be joking, but there was also a hint of flattery. For the first time in his life, Su Qinghui was tired of these social interactions. He glanced at that person coldly. That person was intimidated by Su Qinghui's aura and shrank back. Chapter 322. Su Qinghui blinked and quickly went through his thoughts. Then, he turned around and quickly headed in the direction of the private room where Xiang Kaiping had disappeared. Xiang Caiping's eyes were slightly red when she entered the room. She is a clever woman. If she wasn't a smart woman, she wouldn't have been able to make a name for herself in a foreign country. But now, she hated herself for being so smart. A simple sentence revealed too much information. She suddenly felt a sharp pain in her heart. It was so painful that when she entered the room and saw Su Qingsang, her face was pale and the corners of her eyes were red. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao looked at each other. Su Qingsang had mentioned it to Hu Jinyao when she came in. Su Qinghui ran into Xiang Kaiping. Neither of them had expected that. Looking at Xiang Kaiping now, neither of them thought that it was Su Qingsang. They just thought that she was too excited to see Su Qinghui. Mom. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping worriedly. Hu Jinyao's eyes were unexpectedly deep at that moment. Unlike Su Qingsang's worries, he saw something else. Why did Xiang Kaiping look so guilty? He couldn't help but look at Su Qingsang again. As expected, Xiang Caiping's eyes fell on Su Qingsang from time to time. I'm fine. Sensing Hu Jinyao's gaze, Xiang Kaiping shook her head. Well, let's continue eating. Otherwise, the dishes will get cold. Okay. Su Qingsang didn't ask further. Xiang Kaiping was her elder. If she wanted to say something, she would. However, before the three of them picked up their chopsticks to continue, Su Qinghui had already come uninvited. Kaiping. Su Qinghui only looked at Kaiping when he came in. He had a lot to say, but when he saw Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang sitting at the table, his words were stuck in his throat. Xiang Kaiping ignored him. Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang stood up. Dad. Dad. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui and then at Xiang Kaiping. She couldn't stand the weird atmosphere between the two of them. Dad, have you eaten yet? Do you want to join us? Yeah, ask the waiter to bring us 2 more dishes, Hu Jinyao said. Su Qinghui nodded and sat down beside Xiang Kaiping. Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping turned her face away and ignored Su Qinghui. That coldness was filled with anger. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Qinghui. Today was just a birthday celebration for the three of them. Su Qingsang sat in the middle, with Xiang Kaiping on her right and Hua Jinyao on her left. Su Qinghui came and sat next to Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping didn't look at Su Qinghui at all. Qingsang, eat. It's your birthday today. Don't let other people spoil the fun. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She glanced at Su Qinghui. He was looking at Xiang Kaiping. When he heard what she said, his expression did not change. He only frowned slightly. The atmosphere was somewhat strange. Su Qingsang actually felt a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would have celebrated at home. Qingsang, today is your birthday. I wish you a happy birthday. Su Qinghui was the first to break the awkward silence. He poured a glass of wine and raised it to Su Qingsang. His expression seemed calm, but upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a flash of anxiety in his eyes. Thanks, Dad. Su Qingsang's voice was a little soft. Xiang Kaiping was as still as a mountain. Her clenched fists seemed to be constantly restraining herself. Seeing that, Hua Jinyao suddenly seemed to understand something. He looked at Xiang Kaiping and then at Su Qinghui. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. That smile was somewhat deliberate. Chapter 323. Hearing that, Xiang Caiping's expression changed again. Su Qingsang couldn't help but look at Hua Jinyao. What was he doing? Was he helping her? Su Qinghui looked embarrassed. He was still holding the wine glass in his hand. He was already an old fox in the business world, but he couldn't sit still. Qingsang, I came in a hurry today and forgot to bring a gift. I'll make it up for you next time. He was a little uncomfortable and spoke very slowly. In fact, he really forgot that it was Su Qingsang's birthday today. For so many years, he had been used to ignoring Su Qingsang. Why would he remember her birthday? Xiang Kaiping suddenly stood up in excitement and grabbed Su Qinghui's arm. Su Qinghui didn't expect her action, and the wine in his hand spilled. He quickly put down the wine glass. Get out. Go. Don't stay here. I don't want you here. She kept pushing Su Qinghui outside. Su Qinghui looked at Xiang Caiping's face and said anxiously, Kaiping, don't be like this. I can explain, I really can. I don't want to hear it. Get out. For more than 20 years, he neglected her daughter and didn't even know her birthday. Why did she want him? She had long given up hope. She should have known. People were fickle. How could Su Qinghui still be the same Su Qinghui? She pushed Su Qinghui so hard that he was unprepared. He was pushed to the door by Xiang Kaiping. She reached out to open the door and push him out, but the door opened first. I'm sorry. I'm late. That customer was really annoying. It took me a long time to get rid of him. Shi Mengwan apologized as soon as she opened the door, but she was stunned halfway through. She looked at the situation in front of her. What was going on? She blinked. She was still holding a box in her hand. She looked at Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang with her eyes, asking Su Qingsang what was going on. Hua Jinyao's lips curled up. He knew what was going on. Su Qingsang was confused. She really didn't understand why Xiang Kaiping would suddenly lose her temper. She never thought that it was her. Seeing Shi Mengwan, she stood up as if she had found the key to opening the door. Mengwan, you're here. Yes. Happy birthday. Shi Mengwan raised the box in her hand. Sorry, I should have come earlier. She said the last few words a little slowly, and her eyes inadvertently swept over Xiang Kaiping again. "Hello, Auntie." Xiang Kaiping, who had been pushing Su Qinghui away, put down her hand. She touched her hair uncomfortably and said, "Mengwan is here. You're very considerate. Come on, the dishes are getting cold." "Yes, yes. I thought you weren't coming." Su Qingsang hurriedly tried to smooth things over. At the same time, she looked at Su Qinghui. "Let's eat then." Hu Ji now glanced at Su Qinghui, then got up and went out for a while. Soon, he came back. The group of people with different thoughts sat down at another table in this strange atmosphere. After sitting down, Shi Mengwan kept blinking at Su Qingsang, wanting to ask what was going on. Why was Su Qinghui here? Su Qingsang shook her head at her almost imperceptibly, so Shi Mengwan stopped asking. Chapter 324. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything, so Su Qingsang had to step forward to smooth things over. With her around and Shi Mengwan, the atmosphere wasn't cold anymore. Xiang Kaiping gave Su Qingsang face, so she smiled brightly when she saw Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui kept looking at her. Several times, he wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. The meal ended in such an awkward situation. After dinner, since Shi Mengwan was also there, she suggested going to karaoke. In the past, on Su Qingsang's birthday, the two of them would spend the whole night in KTV. However, Xiang Kaiping was there today, so Su Qingsang could only ask Xiang Kaiping if she wanted to go. "Go. Since you guys go every year, you should go this year too." There was one near Chaoan Courtyard. Shi Mengwan had already booked a seat. The group of people moved to the KTV. Su Qinghui followed her and tried to talk to her, but she ignored him. The atmosphere between the two of them was really awkward. After Su Qingsang and Shi Mengwan released a few songs, the atmosphere finally lightened up a little. Xiang Kaiping said that she was too old to sing, so she would listen to them. Su Qinghui tried to sit next to her, but Xiang Kaiping immediately stood up and sat next to Su Qingsang as soon as he approached. After doing this twice, Su Qinghui finally sat in the corner and stopped moving. Because of the behavior of the two elders, Su Qingsang could only suggest that they go home first. Hu Jinyao didn't comment. Su Qinghui followed Xiang Kaiping and tried to get her into his car, but Xiang Kaiping ignored him. He got into Hu Jinyao's car. Su Qinghui wanted to go forward, but Hu Jinyao blocked his way. "Dad, since Mom doesn't want to see you today, why don't you give her some time to calm down?" Su Qinghui glared at Hu Jinyao. For the first time, he sounded angry. "What do you know? Get out of the way." "Dad." Hu Jinyao's attitude didn't change. There was even a faint smile on his face. "I really don't know anything, but it's getting late. Maybe next time." Seeing that Su Qinghui didn't want to give up, the smile on Hu Jinyao's face faded a little. "Today is Qingsang's birthday. Dad, it's better if you talk to Mom next time." Su Qinghui stood still. At last, he stared at Hu Jinyao, nodded, and left reluctantly. After Su Qinghui left, Shi Mengwan didn't linger. She waved at Su Qingsang and left as well. Hu Jinyao drove Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping home. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang, wanting to say something but hesitating. "Qingsang, Mom, you must be tired today. Go back to your room and rest." That night, Su Qingsang had a rough idea of what Xiang Kaiping was angry about. However, she couldn't comfort him even if she wanted to. "Qingsang, I. Xiang Kaiping had a lot to say. Su Qingsang couldn't help but give her a hug. "Mom, you don't have to say anything. I know everything. I'm fine. The way I am right now is pretty good. It would have been better if she hadn't said anything. The more she spoke, the more Xiang Kaiping blamed herself. Looking at Su Qingsang's overly calm face, he knew that she had long been used to this kind of neglect. The tip of her nose was a little sour. She nodded hard, turned around, and quickly went back to her room. Su Qingsang looked at her back and turned to face Hu Jinyao. What's wrong? Hu Jinyao noticed that she didn't look well. Are you unhappy? Are you angry too? Chapter 325. She was an illegitimate daughter, and Su Qinghui married Li Qinxue. If he didn't ignore her, would he treat her well? If that was the case, her position in the Su family might be even more awkward. Li Qinxue's dislike and Su Peixian and her brother's difficulties might be too much for her to bear. I don't think your mother reacted too much today. I think your father was strange today. Those emotions weren't the emotions of seeing a long-lost lover. Hu Jinyao thought about Su Qinghui's behavior today. He had an inexplicable feeling that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what it was. What's wrong? Su Qingsang didn't notice it. She wasn't close to Su Qinghui. I haven't seen my mother for decades. It's normal to be emotional when she suddenly sees her. No. It wasn't that kind of emotion. Although Hu Jinyao was young, he had dealt with all kinds of people over the years. He could still distinguish Su Qinghui's eyes. Then what do you think is wrong? Su Qingsang thought for a long time but didn't find anything wrong. Okay. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Working in the business world every day and scheming seemed to have made her mind not pure. You're thinking too much. Su Qinghui's expression suddenly changed. I'm actually a little worried now. Worried about what? I thought that my father would never find out that my mother is back. But now, not only did he find out, but he also ran into her. Looking at his behavior today, I think he might cause some trouble. The peace of the Su family in the past decades is probably going to be broken. What followed was the possibility that her peace would also be broken. Su Qingsang didn't like that feeling. What's there to worry about? Hu Jinyao pulled her body into his arms. When the time comes, I'll take you and our mother back to Rong City. You're not in Lin City, and they won't bother you. Su Qingsang looked at him and seriously considered the feasibility of his words for the first time. That's fine. My mother is used to living in Rong City anyway. I think she won't have any problems adapting. Honey. Hu Jinyao suddenly covered his chest with an uncomfortable expression. My heart hurts. What's wrong? Su Qingsang suddenly became a little nervous because of his expression. Are you okay? My heart really hurts. I've asked you so many times to come to Rong City with me, but you refused. Now that I'm leaving with your mother, you're finally willing. Honey, don't you think you're treating me too badly? How can this be the same? Su Qingsang was about to lose to him. How is it different? Hu Jinyao put his arms around her waist. I don't care. I'm sad anyway. You have to make it up to me. How do you want me to make it up to you? Su Qingsang looked at him, knowing that he was going to make some outrageous demands again. Come, let's go out for a while. As Hu Jinyao spoke, he suddenly took her hand and led her outside. So late. It was almost 11 o'clock. Let's go. Hu Jinyao didn't give her a chance to refuse and pulled her out of the door. Su Qingsang didn't know what he was up to, but she still followed behind him. The two of them went downstairs. They didn't drive, but crossed the road and went to a park across the neighborhood. Su Qingsang had been here once before, but it was late at night. What did Hu Jinyao want to do? Hu Jinyao. Chapter 326. Su Qingsang let Hu Jinyao hold her hand and walked all the way to the center of the park. There was a man-made lake there. The lake was very big. In the past, there used to be boats on it. But now it was a little cold. The wind blew, and Su Qingsang felt cold. Hu Jinyao put his arms around her shoulders and looked at Su Qingsang under the night sky. There were only small lights on the ground in the park. The whole environment looked mysterious and hazy. Honey, today is your birthday. You haven't made a wish yet. She really hadn't made a wish. When she was cutting the cake, she was thinking about Su Qinghui and Xiang Kaiping. Come on, now close your eyes and make a wish. Hu Jinyao suddenly reached out and covered her eyes. Su Qingsang's eyes were dark. The only thing she could feel was Hu Jinyao's warm palm. Make a wish. Just as the wish flashed through her mind, she heard a sudden loud noise. Su Qingsang jumped. At the same time, Hu Jinyao let go of her hand. In the middle of the lake, there were a few boats. The fireworks on the boats were rising into the sky one by one. Su Qingsang's eyes widened. She turned around and looked at Hu Jinyao in shock. You, look. Hu Jinyao turned her head to look at the sky. Su Qingsang saw it clearly now. After the first 3 fireworks exploded, the shapes of the fireworks turned into hearts one after another. There were a total of 25. It was the number of her birthday. After the heart, there was a big love. On the other side of the lake, there were also fireworks. The last one to rise into the sky was an S. And the words, Happy Birthday. Su Qingsang covered her mouth tightly to prevent herself from screaming. It wasn't that she hadn't seen fireworks in her life, but this was the first time that a sky full of fireworks was set off just for her. Hu Jinyao leaned close to her ear and put his arms around her waist. It's not 12 yet. This is my birthday present for you. Do you like it? Su Qingsang couldn't say anything. She could only nod hard. Her eyes were a little swollen and red. Her nose was sore, and she had an inexplicable urge to cry. Hu Jinyao had been preparing for her birthday since the day before yesterday. She knew very well that he must have prepared this a long time ago. Hu Jinyao, thank you. Silly girl. Hu Jinyao looked at her blushing face under the smoke and turned her around. He lowered his head and kissed her lips. Su Qingsang put her arms around his neck. Under the light of the fireworks, his face was handsome. She saw her own reflection in his eyes. She wanted to cry, but she also wanted to laugh. She could not resist giving him more and more passionate kisses. This was the first time someone had spent so much effort to celebrate her birthday. She hugged him tightly and let him shield her from the cold winter wind. The fireworks continued. Hu Jinyao let go of her and pressed his forehead against hers. She felt his breath on her face, and there was a faint smile in her eyes. Su Qingsang smiled, tiptoed, and kissed him on the cheek. Then, she buried her face in Hu Jinyao's chest, and her eyes fell on the still sparkling fireworks across from her. Listening to his steady heartbeat and feeling his warm and thick chest, Su Qingsang felt that she was surrounded by a great sense of satisfaction and happiness. She suddenly raised her head to look at him. Her clear eyes looked even more dazzling under the fireworks. Chapter 327. Hu Jinyao's lips curled up because of her words. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. Hu Jinyao, I like you. Su Qingsang said it again. Hu Jinyao picked her up and kissed her lips again. Their lips touched, and it was indescribably lingering. When Su Qingsang had difficulty breathing and her legs were weak, and she had to cling to him, he finally let go of her. Me too. His deep voice responded with 3 simple words. Su Qingsang wanted to laugh again. She buried her head in Hua Jinyao's arms and tightened her arms around his waist. The fireworks slowly dimmed, and the park was quiet again. Su Qingsang looked at Hua Jinyao. Did you get up early to prepare? That was why she didn't see him when she got up in the morning. What do you think? Hua Jinyao got up early in the morning and prepared 2 birthday gifts for Su Qingsang. One was to transfer a project that he had decided to give to the Chiu family to the Li family and to Su Qinghui. He wanted to teach the Chiu family a little lesson for Su Qingsang and let them know. In the future, no one in Lin City could touch Su Qingsang. Anyone who touched her would be going against him. The other was the fireworks in front of him. He could give her jewelry and other things like that on a normal day. Of course, his birthday had to be different. Hua Jinyao, thank you. Hua Jinyao looked into her eyes and lowered his head to her ear. Compared to thank you, I prefer what you just said. Su Qingsang blushed a little, but Hua Jinyao suddenly took her hand and walked back. Let's go home. Tell me slowly when we get home. Su Qingsang blushed even more. Her face didn't feel cold anymore. Not only was it not cold, but it was also a little hot. Hua Jinyao saw her shy little face from the corner of his eye. He suddenly squatted down and said, Come, get up. What are you doing? I'll carry you back. Stop it. Su Qingsang blushed. I can walk by myself. You come up. I'll carry you or carry you. You choose. Hua Jinyao, I said come up. Hua Jinyao turned his face and looked at her. Hurry up. Su Qingsang looked around. It was the middle of the night and there was basically no one here. After hesitating for a few seconds, she jumped onto Hua Jinyao's back. Hua Jinyao easily carried her on his back and walked back. Su Qingsang lay on Hua Jinyao's back and stared at him, sticking close to his back. Hua Jinyao. Why are you so nice to me? What? Nothing, I just wanted to call you. Don't worry, I'll let you scream to your heart's content later. Su Qingsang stopped screaming. As they spoke, they had already walked out of the park. The streetlights cast long shadows on them. Su Qingsang looked at the shadows of the 2 of them. For a moment, she wished that there was no end to this road and that they could keep walking like this. Her heart fluttering, she suddenly leaned over and kissed him on the neck. Hua Jinyao's body instantly stiffened. He turned to look at Su Qingsang and said, Wait for me. We'll be home soon. Su Qingsang immediately cowered and retracted her face. Hua Jinyao picked up his pace with her on his back. Su Qingsang's legs were still weak when she woke up in the morning. She almost couldn't stand the moment she got off the bed. She muttered in a low voice, but there wasn't much displeasure on her face. After washing up, she went out of the room and found that Hua Jinyao had already gone to work. Xiang Kaiping saw her come out and immediately brought breakfast out. Morning, Mom. Su Qingsang didn't have to walk closer to see the obvious dark shadows under Xiang Caiping's eyes. It seemed that she didn't sleep well last night. Chapter 328. I'm fine. What could possibly happen to Mom? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang and asked her to have breakfast first. Ji Niao has something to do at the company this morning. That's why I didn't wait for you to eat together. Su Qingsang nodded. She seemed to feel it when Hua Jinyao got up in the morning, but she was too sleepy, so she went back to sleep. Sometimes, she really envied Hua Jinyao's physical strength. No matter what time he slept the night before or how many times he came, he would still be full of energy the next morning. Let's eat. Xiang Kaiping brought the breakfast out. Su Qingsang walked closer and found that Xiang Kaiping not only had dark circles under her eyes, but her eyes were also a little swollen. Did Xiang Kaiping cry last night? That was possible. The sudden encounter with Su Qinghui must have been a great shock to her, so it was normal for her to not be able to sleep well. Seeing her like this, Su Qingsang felt sorry for her, but at the same time, she felt a little conflicted. After finishing most of the porridge in front of her, Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping tentatively. Do you want to go back to Rong City? Back to Rong City. Xiang Caiping's expression changed instantly. You want Mom to go back to Rong City. I don't want you to go back. I want us to go together. Su Qingsang was afraid that she would misunderstand, so she quickly explained. What Ji Niao actually mentioned to me before that he wanted me to go to Rong City with him. But I work here, and I have no other relatives or friends in Rong City. So I'm not very willing, but if you don't want to stay in Lin City, then we can go back to Rong City. Ji Niao is also from Rong City. Xiang Kaiping heaved a sigh of relief when she realized that she wasn't trying to chase her away. I'm fine. Qingsang, I acknowledge you. From now on, I'll be wherever you are. Su Qingsang nodded, knowing that this was actually the best result. She lowered her head and continued to eat. In the end, she didn't ask about Su Qinghui again. Whether Xiang Kaiping was willing or not, it was a fact that Su Qinghui was already married. It was impossible for them to be together now. Since that was the case, why should they stay and see each other from time to time and increase the sadness? After lunch, Su Qingsang picked up her bag and went to work. Before she left, she looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, Mom, if you feel bored at home, go out for a walk. It's okay, I'm not bored. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang. I bought wool yesterday. I was thinking of knitting a sweater for you. Mom, if you have nothing to do, you can watch TV or take a walk outside. If you have nothing to do, you can go to the neighborhood downstairs and dance with the other aunties and uncles. Don't overwork yourself. Don't worry, I won't be tired. I just can't stay idle. In fact, when she was in Rong City, she could sit at home alone for a day. But now that she had a daughter, she always felt that it was not enough to do anything for Su Qingsang. Okay, I'll go to work first. After Su Qingsang left, Xiang Kaiping cleared the table. In fact, Hua Jinyao had mentioned this a few times. He had asked a part-time worker or a nanny to clean up, but he didn't let her do it. However, in the past 20 years, Xiang Kaiping had done everything for her daughter. Now that she could do something for her daughter, she was so happy. How could she feel tired? Just as she was about to take out the wool, the doorbell rang. When she saw Su Qinghui standing outside, Xiang Kaiping wanted to close the door without hesitation. However, Su Qinghui was one step faster than her. He blocked her movement and squeezed through the door. When Xiang Kaiping saw Su Qinghui, she was furious. She opened the door and forcefully pushed Su Qinghui out. Chapter 329. Leave. Xiang Kaiping tried to push Su Qinghui a few times, but he didn't budge. Kaiping, don't be like this. Calm down. Su Qinghui wouldn't leave. He stubbornly squeezed through the door and closed it. Xiang Kaiping tried to push Su Qinghui out, but he didn't budge. Seeing him come in, the anger on her face became more obvious. Get out, get out. This is your daughter's house. You're not welcome here. Kaiping. Su Qinghui's lips moved. He wanted to explain, but when he saw Taiping's expression, he swallowed his words. Calm down. Give me a few minutes. Let me finish what I want to say. I have nothing to say to you. Xiang Kaiping didn't dare to think about it. Su Qingsang had suffered so much in the years she wasn't by her side. Her heart ached when she thought about it. The more her heart ached, the more she hated Su Qinghui. Kaiping. Su Qinghui's voice was tired. He didn't go home yesterday. He stayed in the company. He didn't sleep all night, so he looked extremely haggard. Can you calm down? 20 years had passed, and so much had changed. The gentle little woman in his memory became old and sharp at the same time. Xiang Kaiping took a deep breath and turned to look at Su Qinghui. I'm very calm. If I wasn't, I would want to kill you right now. Su Qinghui suddenly smiled. It was a bitter smile. Kaiping, do you know? I actually. His eyes fell on the sweater on the sofa, which looked like it had just been knitted. Su Qinghui's voice suddenly stopped. The white wool couldn't have been knitted by Xiang Kaiping for herself. It could only be for Su Qingsang. He closed his eyes. Are you knitting a sweater for Qingsang? What else? Xiang Kaiping looked at him coldly. Qingsang doesn't have a father who cares about her. As her mother, I have to care about her. Qingsang. Su Qinghui looked at Xiang Kaiping and his lips moved a few times. She actually doesn't. What are you trying to say? Xiang Kaiping hated Su Qinghui's attitude the most. You want to say that she doesn't need my care? Or do I not need your concern? Su Qinghui, are you even human? Su Qinghui looked exhausted. Looking at Kaiping, he suddenly smiled. Yes. I'm not human. I'm not human. I'm not a human. He said 3 sentences in a row and took a step back. I'm not human. I abandoned you for my future, for myself. I'm not human. I did it for, he suddenly couldn't continue. He waved his hand. She exuded a sense of helplessness. Kaiping. You really don't have to be too nice to Qingsang. She. Su Qinghui. Xiang Kaiping was furious. She didn't expect Su Qinghui to say something like that at a time like this. I must have been blind to believe you, to believe that you would treat my daughter well. I trust that you will treat my daughter well. I must have lost my mind to hand my daughter over to you. I must have thought that you would protect her, take care of her, and let her live a happy life. Why am I so stupid? How could I believe you? You've already betrayed me once. Why should I trust you? Chapter 330. At this point, Xiang Caiping's voice sounded like she was about to cry. Her eyes were red, and she was so overwhelmed with emotions that she couldn't control herself. You betrayed me, you hurt me, and I endured all of that. I understand the situation you were in. I understand it all. But you shouldn't have treated my daughter like this. If you didn't want to, you could have abandoned her. If you didn't want her, I would have taken her away. I would have taken good care of her. I would. Xiang Kaiping couldn't continue. Su Qinghui's attitude had revealed too many problems. She pointed at the gate. Su Qinghui, get out. Get out of here before I do anything to kill you. I'm telling you, I will never forgive you. Never. Su Qinghui looked at Xiang Kaiping. He had a lot to say, but he held it in. There was no need to say more. There was really no need to say more. Kaiping, one day, you will understand that everything I do is for you. For our child. Get out. Xiang Kaiping was so angry that her head was starting to hurt. Get out. Su Qinghui's lips were pressed into a straight line. He was still elegant and graceful. But there was endless exhaustion in his eyes. He turned to leave, stumbling a little. Before he left, he looked at the ball of white wool and clenched his fists by his side. He was right, he thought. He couldn't be wrong. He walked away, his steps more determined than before. After he left, Xiang Caiping's body went limp and she sat on the ground. How did the man she had truly loved become like this? Was Su Qinghui really the man she had loved? Qiu Zhenjiu was still sleeping, but Qiu Yanbo pulled her up. Get up. Brother. Qiu Zhenjiu was still asleep. She turned over and wanted to go back to sleep. Qiu Yanbo didn't give her the chance. He pulled her up forcefully. Qiu Zhenjiu, wake up. Tell me, what did you do at the Su family's party the day before yesterday? Qiu Yanbo hadn't gone to Su Peijian's birthday party. After all, he had broken off his engagement with Su Peijian, so it wasn't appropriate for him to go. Moreover, Su Peijian knew about his feelings. It would be awkward if they met again. It just so happened that the Chou family had a business deal to discuss in Harbor City, so Qiu Yanbo went on a business trip. Last night, when she came back, she had wanted to talk to Hu Jinyao about the project that she had previously set. When she arrived at the company, she heard that Hu Jinyao had given the project to Su Qinghui. In terms of strength, the Chou family was not inferior to the Su family in the slightest. Moreover, they had previously agreed that the Chou family would be in charge of this project. Qiu Yanbo didn't know what went wrong, so he contacted Hu Jinyao immediately. Hu Jinyao only said, "Why did I do this? Why don't you ask your good sister?" Qiu Yanbo didn't even make a phone call and went straight home. Qiu Zhenjiu, explain yourself. What did you do during Su Peijian's birthday party? Qiu Zhenjiu was no longer sleepy because of Qiu Yanbo. She sat up angrily and said, "What can I do? What do I have to do? Aren't you my brother? Why are you throwing a tantrum at me as soon as you come back?" Qiu Yanbo stared at Qiu Zhenjiu's face and suddenly thought of something. Don't tell me you touched Su Qingsang. Who touched her? Qiu Zhenjiu was furious at the mention of this. All I did was pour a glass of wine on her. Why don't you ask her what she did to me? Chapter 331. Qiu Yanbo raised his arm and was about to slap Qiu Zhenjiu. Qiu Zhenjiu blushed at his action. Qiu Yanbo, are you my brother? Who are you helping? Your sister was wronged, but you didn't stand up for me. Now you want to hit me. I'm going to tell Dad. Are you done? Qiu Yanbo was furious, but he didn't slap Su Qingsang. Do you know that Hu Jinyao gave the Su family a project that our company had previously negotiated with him? Do you know how much that project cost? Do you know how much our company lost because of that glass of wine? Qiu Zhenjiu was dumbfounded. She looked at Qiu Yanbo and couldn't believe what he said. Is Hu Jinyao crazy? How is that possible? I'm just... She suddenly lifted the quilt and was about to get out of bed. I'm going to look for him. What are you looking for? What's the point of looking for him? Qiu Yanbo grabbed her arm. I'm telling you, next time, stay away from Su Qingsang. Brother, get this straight. She bullied me too. Qiu Zhenjiu was furious. Qiu Yanbo didn't want to reason with her. He raised his hand and made a one sign. Just this once. Don't do it again. He had to go back to the company to deal with the aftermath. Looking at his sister, Qiu Yanbo was really angry. Why couldn't she be more sensible and cause less trouble like Su Qingsang? Qiu Zhenjiu watched her brother leave. Not only did she not calm down, but she became even angrier. She punched the quilt angrily and decided that she couldn't just let it go like this. When Su Qingsang got home, she found that Xiang Caiping's eyes were even more swollen than when she left the house. She was shocked and wanted to ask Xiang Caiping, but Xiang Caiping didn't seem to want to talk about it. Su Qingsang didn't ask. After dinner, Su Qingsang sat with Xiang Caiping for most of the day. She watched her knitting a sweater. She was very fast. In just a day's time, he had already finished knitting the bottom circle. "Mom, you're so fast." "Fast?" Xiang Caiping picked it up and compared it with Su Qingsang. "I'm old. I used to move faster." "It's okay. I have clothes." Su Qingsang glanced at the direction of the room. "Hu Jinyao bought a lot of clothes last time. He's so nice to you." "Yes." Su Qingsang nodded. Thinking of the fireworks yesterday, she still felt very happy. "Aren't you going to write that thesis?" "You can go, I'll watch TV here and knit." "Then don't stay up too late. Rest early." "Okay." Xiang Caiping looked at Su Qingsang and sighed inwardly. His daughter was so sensible and obedient. However, Su Qinghui treated her like this. Su Qingsang left the living room but didn't go to the study. Instead, she went back to her bedroom. Hu Jinyao had already finished showering and was drying his hair. When he saw her come in, he sat down beside her and said, "Aren't you watching TV with Mom?" Su Qingsang shook her head. "Hu Jinyao, why do I feel that Mom's mood today is even worse than this morning?" She really wanted to ask what had happened. However, seeing that Xiang Caiping did not want to talk about it, she could not bring herself to ask. "It's normal for her to be in a bad mood. Because your father came to see her." "How do you know?" Chapter 332. I beg you. You can tell me now. Su Qingsang begged him, but Hu Jinyao shook his head. "Not sincere enough. I won't say it." Hu Jinyao. "Look, this is not the attitude of begging." As Hu Jinyao spoke, he turned around to get the hairdryer. "It's up to you. Do you think I don't know?" Su Qingsang's temper flared up. "My father came to see my mother, of course, not to divorce her and marry her. So, why is my mother so sad?" "There's only one reason." "What?" "Because of me." After saying these 3 words, Su Qingsang fell silent. Hu Jinyao couldn't bear to see her like this. He put the hairdryer in her hand and said, "Help me dry my hair." Meeting his understanding gaze, Su Qingsang stood up, pulled Hu Jinyao to sit down in front of the dressing table, turned on the hairdryer, and began to dry his hair. Her movements were very gentle, and so was her voice. Hu Jinyao could hear her very clearly in the low sound of the hairdryer. "I actually understand what happened yesterday. My mother always felt that she owed me. She always felt that I hadn't lived a good life all these years. And looking at my father's attitude, she definitely couldn't stand it. I think my father must have gone to my mother to explain today, but my mother wouldn't listen. And she blamed him for neglecting me all these years. My mother probably thought too much of me. So, she was sad for me." After saying this, she fell silent and focused on drying Hu Jinyao's hair. Hu Jinyao's hair had already been dried. He turned to look at her, suddenly took the hairdryer from her hand, turned it off, and put it aside. Then, he pulled her body onto his lap and sat her down. "I thought you didn't know. How is that possible?" Su Qingsang shook her head. "I think it's very simple. I can guess it. I thought you were going to say that it's because mother and daughter are connected that you know so well. It's really not. Su Qingsang shook her head again. I still don't have that kind of feeling for my mother. After all, we haven't lived together for so many years. But I know what happened to her, and I know that she wants me well now. I don't blame her, and I don't hate her. Hating people was too tiring. She didn't like hating people. What's more, she only lacked the love of her parents, which was much better than some orphans. Moreover, she had both parents now. Even without a father, she still had a mother. She suddenly put her arms around Hua Jinyao's neck and looked into his eyes. Hua Jinyao, let's be nicer to my mother in the future, okay? Okay. Hua Jinyao tightened his arms around her waist. Don't worry. Your mother is my mother. I will definitely be filial to her. Su Qingsang looked at him and suddenly leaned over to kiss him on the lips. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang rubbed her face against his chest and said, It's so good to have you here. In fact, she knew a lot of things and understood a lot of principles. She could let go of many difficulties and unhappiness on her own. After all, after so many years, whether it was fair or not, he was already used to it. However, things were different now. She had Hua Jinyao by her side. With him around, it was as if all the unfairness and grievances in the past were nothing. She rubbed her face against his chest again and smelled the cool scent on his body. She only felt at ease. Hua Jinyao's chin rested on the top of her head. He smelled the faint fragrance on her body, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. However, when he thought about what had happened in the past few days, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Honey, do you feel that there seems to be something wrong? Chapter 333. Hua Jinyao's eyes were deep. He was thinking about what had happened yesterday and what had happened before. Your father and Li Qianxue have been together for so many years, but they don't have a good relationship. Yesterday, your father was very excited to see your mother, which means that he can't forget her. But if that's the case, it doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense? Su Qingsang raised her head and looked at him. What are you trying to say? Hua Jinyao felt that something was wrong when he saw Su Qinghui yesterday. Seeing Kaiping today made him feel even more strange. Look, if your father loves your mother, then it doesn't make sense for him to treat you, the child of the woman he loves the most. What doesn't make sense? Su Qingsang thought it made sense. No matter how much he loved my mother, it was all in the past. Think about it, how many years have passed? What's more, the Li family's power is right there. Even if he wants to be nice to me, he can't. Even if he wants to be nice to me, he has to care about the Li family, right? No, he didn't. If Su Qinghui was a person who cared about the Li family, then he and Li Qianxue wouldn't just maintain a respectful relationship on the surface. Moreover, his recent cooperation with the Li family had increased the opportunities for them to meet. He felt that Su Qinghui's attitude toward the Li family was definitely not a concern. In the Li family, even though Su Qinghui was only a general manager, his words carried a lot of weight. Moreover, Li Qianxue didn't seem to have any intention of competing with him for power. In many cases, Li Qianxue was just a figurehead, and Su Qinghui did the rest. If Su Qinghui wanted to care about Li Qianxue, then he wouldn't have the power he had today. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes and fell into thought. Somehow, he felt as if he had overlooked something crucial. What was it? A bold idea flashed through Hua Jinyao's mind. What's wrong? Su Qingsang found that Hua Jinyao's face was a little serious, so she couldn't help but raise her hand and wave it in front of his face. Hua Jinyao withdrew his gaze and met Su Qingsang's worried eyes. She interrupted his idea. Nothing. Maybe I'm overthinking. You're overthinking. Su Qingsang sighed. My father and my mother haven't seen each other for so many years. It's normal for them to be a little surprised when they meet again. I don't think it's suspicious. Maybe. Next, I just want to comfort my mother and make her live a happier life. As long as you're happy. Hua Ji now thought of something else. In a few days, on the weekend, we'll take Mom to the villa for a couple of days, or we can take your mom to walk around nearby. Sure. This was a good suggestion. She was getting on in years and probably didn't want to go far. I don't think she likes going out at all, so she prefers to stay at home. Let's go somewhere nearby to play. After saying that, Su Qingsang got down from Hua Jinyao's body and searched for a suitable place to take Xiang Kaiping to. Hua Jinyao looked at her serious and focused face and curled up the corners of his lips. If something was wrong, then so be it. As long as he was here, no matter what happened in the future, he would always be able to protect her. His woman did not need to worry so much. As long as he was happy. When Su Peijian entered the room, she saw Li Qianxue sitting on the sofa with a cold expression on her face. Only when she saw Su Peijian come in did Li Qianxue smile a little. You're back. Chapter 334. Li Qianxue glanced upstairs with a slightly cold expression. Your father is upstairs. I don't know who pissed him off this time. He ran into the study without dinner and hasn't come out yet. Su Peijian looked at Li Qianxue and looked upstairs. I'm going to see Dad. Li Qianxue wanted to say no, but she waved her hand. Go ahead. If he's drunk, don't bother. Just ask Nanny Zhang to send someone up to send him back to his room. She was glad that the old man had been invited to go out and was not at home today. Otherwise, if he had seen Su Qinghui like that, he would have lectured him again. Su Peijian went upstairs. As soon as she opened the door of the study, she smelled alcohol. The smell made Su Peijian frown. She looked at Su Qinghui, who was sitting behind the desk. Dad? Are you okay? Su Qinghui drank some alcohol, but he wasn't drunk. After so many years, he never allowed himself to get drunk again. When he saw Su Peijian come in, he was stunned and put down the glass in his hand. Peijian. You're back. Yes. Su Peijian stepped forward and looked at the empty bottles on the table. She was a little dissatisfied. Dad, why did you drink so much? Don't worry. I'm not drunk. Su Qinghui sat up and looked at Su Peijian. She was different from Su Qingsang's gentle and beautiful face. Su Peijian's facial features were much more beautiful. She looked neither like herself nor her mother. He didn't know what went wrong, but Su Peijian actually looked like her grandmother. Back then, Su Qinghui's mother was a famous beauty in the surrounding area. Su Peijian's facial features were like her grandmother's, extremely bright and beautiful. Dad? What's the matter at the company? Su Peijian was originally helping out in the company, but she had been in a bad mood because of the broken engagement with Qiu Yanbo. She hadn't been to work for several days. Nothing. Dad will solve the problem. Su Qinghui sat up and looked at Su Peijian. He suddenly reached out and held her hand. Peijian, do you blame me? Dad, what are you talking about? Why would I blame you? Because Su Qinghui was stunned and suddenly shook his head. I asked you to apologize to Qingsang. Do you blame me? Nope. It's not your fault. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were to blame. Taking advantage of their power to bully others was too much. As long as you don't blame me. Su Qinghui seemed relieved. He didn't let go of her hand. Instead, he tightened his grip. Peijian, don't worry. In the future, Be it the Su family or the Li family, they will all be yours. Dad, what are you talking about? Su Peijian was confused by her father's words. I have a younger brother. Don't tell me you're drunk. Your brother. Su Qinghui narrowed his eyes and suddenly fell silent. Dad is drunk. Go and rest. It's fine now. Oh. Su Peijian felt that something was wrong, but she guessed that Su Qinghui was drunk. Dad, you should rest early too. I'll go back to my room first. Yes. Su Qinghui nodded and suddenly thought of something. By the way, during this period, what? Nothing. Su Qinghui knew his daughter's personality very well. The more he told her not to do something, the more she would do it. Thinking about it this way, he didn't have to think about asking Su Peijian not to cause trouble for Qingsang. Maybe the more he said, the more she would cause trouble for Su Qingsang. Chapter 335. Dad, I'm fine. It was just a man. She could always let it go. She just couldn't forgive Su Qingsang for making Qiu Yanbo change his mind. That's good. That's good. Su Peijian felt that her father was a little strange. Dad, are you really okay? I'm fine. Go rest. Su Qinghui's voice sounded tired. Su Peijian turned to leave. When she reached the door, she suddenly stopped. By the way, Dad, Maishin said she wanted to go to Japan for a hot spring. How about I go with her for a few days? Okay. You'll have a companion together. Tell me if you need money. Su Peijian really felt that there was something wrong with Su Qinghui. Dad, did you forget? I have money. Yes. You have money. Su Qinghui waved his hand as if he was tired. Su Peijian closed the door, and the study returned to silence. Su Qinghui poured himself another glass of wine. He thought that he was not wrong. In the end, Li Qianxue was still a little worried. She went upstairs and found that Su Qinghui had fallen asleep on the chair. There were at least 4 or 5 empty bottles on the table, and one of them had fallen on the ground. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui's face for a long time, then turned to leave. She went back to the room and brought back a blanket, covering Su Qinghui just like that. The study was air-conditioned, so it wasn't cold. Her movement didn't wake Su Qinghui up. When she covered him with the blanket and was about to leave, she heard Su Qinghui murmur a few words. Li Qianxue stopped and stood still again. This time, she heard clearly that Su Qinghui said, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. Wrong? What was wrong? Li Qianxue frowned slightly, and her exquisite makeup showed a hint of contemplation. When Hu Jinyao came back from morning exercise, Su Qingsang had just woken up. She hadn't gotten up yet and was playing with her phone on the bed. When she saw him come in, she turned over and half-propped herself up to look at Hu Jinyao. I looked around. The scenery of Little West Lake is good. I've been there before, but in recent years, some of the gardens that weren't open before have been opened again. We should go and have a look. You decide. I've checked. It only takes 2 hours to drive there. That way, my mom won't be too tired. That Little West Lake was 2 hours away from downtown Lin City. Because of the beautiful scenery, it was called Little West Lake. Su Qingsang had been there once when she was in university. Sounds good. Hu Jinyao sat down by the bed. You decide. Yes. That's settled then. Actually, isn't it New Year's Day in 2 days? Do you want to go somewhere far away? Hu Jinyao had a good suggestion. For example, take your mother to Japan for a hot spring or something. What do you think? Japan. Su Qingsang felt that it was a bit far. I don't think that's necessary. It was too far away. And I don't even know if my mom has a passport. Leave the passport to me. I'll handle it for Mom. I just think that since your mother is from Lin City, she probably won't be interested in these places. I think going to Japan is a good idea. Soak in a hot spring. When the time comes, you women should go shopping. Isn't that good? Then I'll ask my mom. Let's see if she wants to go. In fact, Su Qingsang also thought that it was better to let Xiang Kaiping go. She was actually a little afraid that Su Qinghui would come looking for her again. It didn't matter if it happened once or twice, but if it happened too many times, she was afraid that it would attract Li Qianqua's attention. Although she wasn't afraid of trouble, she would try to avoid it as much as possible. Chapter 336. Hua Jinyao knew what she was thinking just by looking at her face. He leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Honey, just do what you like. Leave everything else to me. With him around, no one in Lin City would dare to touch Su Qingsang. If there was any trouble, he would not be afraid. To Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao's surprise, Xiang Kaiping did not object. She also had a passport. That's settled then. Go to Japan. Su Qingsang was very happy to think about going out to play. My research project is almost done. There are a few more interns in the hospital these days. It's okay to take 2 days off. Why don't we pack up and leave the day after tomorrow? Will it be too late? Xiang Kaiping glanced at Hua Jinyao. Jinyao, you have a lot of things to do in the company, right? You guys go ahead. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang and winked at her. I still have something to do in the company. You guys go ahead. I'll come 2 days later. Okay. Su Qingsang almost immediately understood what Hua Jinyao meant. Xiang Kaiping hadn't been with her all these years. She probably wanted to spend more time with her. Although Xiang Kaiping asked Hua Jinyao, she was happy because of his words. It was good for her to spend time alone with Su Qingsang and cultivate their mother-daughter relationship. Hua Jinyao entered the company and called Yang Wenchang. Help me make the arrangements. 2 plane tickets to Japan the day after tomorrow. Then make arrangements for the reception staff there. After giving orders to Yang Wenchang and taking care of some work, the secretary said that someone was looking for him. Hua Jinyao heard the secretary's message and refused directly. I won't see you. President Hua. Qiu Junjiu heard that Hua Jinyao didn't want to see her, so she barged into Hua Jinyao's office. President Hua, our 2 companies are working together. It doesn't seem appropriate for you to keep me 1,000 miles away, does it? Hua Jinyao frowned because of Qiu Junjiu's sudden intrusion. He looked at Yang Wenchang and waved his hand, signaling him to leave. Miss Qiu, we are working with your company. It's not you. I have no business to discuss with you, so it doesn't matter if it's appropriate or not. Qiu Junjiu was angry. President Hua, what are you doing? Are you taking advantage of your power to bully others? Hua Jinyao rubbed his chin with one hand and nodded. Yes. I'm a bully. You have a problem with that? Qiu Junjiu's face turned green. President Hua, isn't it a little too ungentlemanly for you to bully a woman like this? Manners also depends on who you're talking to. For some people who don't want face, there's no need. President Hua, don't forget that our 2 companies are working together. How could he humiliate her like this? Didn't he consider the feelings of his partner? Yes. I also want to remind Miss Cho not to forget. Our 2 families are cooperating now. Hua Jinyao's voice carried a hint of warning. His lips curled into a mocking smile. The Chiu family wasn't the only company in Lin City that could do this kind of project. If Miss Cho still doesn't understand the situation, then I can only use another method to remind Miss Cho to pay attention to her identity and bearing. Chiu Junjio was so angry that she couldn't speak. She nodded her head vigorously and said, "Okay, okay." President Hua was indeed unreasonable. No wonder he married an illegitimate daughter for some shameful reason. Chapter 337. What? Chiu Junjio took a deep breath. What? Are you playing dumb now, President Hua? Do you really think I don't know why you married Su Qingsang? Hua Jinyao leaned back in his chair and glanced at Chiu Junjio's face coldly. What are you trying to say, Miss Cho? I'm saying that you married Su Qingsang for some unspeakable reason. Chiu Junjio looked at Hua Jinyao and thought of Chiu Yanbo's warning to her. She was furious. President Hua, you have a great status and style. You are furious because of your beauty. You gave up the collaboration with our company to someone else just because Su Qingsang. You are so nice to Su Qingsang. Isn't it because you feel guilty? Why would I feel guilty? Hua Jinyao's gaze turned cold as he stared at Chiu Junjio. Miss Chiu, I sincerely hope that you will watch your words and actions. After all, if you cause trouble for the Chiu family, I'm afraid that even your brother and father will not be able to handle it. Don't be in a hurry to threaten me. Chiu Junjio was furious. She looked at Hua Jinyao's gloomy face coldly. I heard some interesting gossip when I went to Rong City last time. Given your status, President Hua, I'm sure you don't care to know such gossip, right? Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes. His handsome face flashed with coldness. What are you trying to say, Miss Cho? I know that you have not signed a contract with Li Corporation for that project. I want to say that this project should be given to the Chiu family. Hua Jinyao stared at Chiu Junjio's face and suddenly stood up. He walked around the desk and stood in front of Chiu Junjio. Chiu Junjio looked at him with a playful and provocative smile. Hua Jinyao suddenly reached out and grabbed her neck. Chiu Junjio, right? Do you know what I hate the most in my life? He tightened his grip and said in a voice even colder than before, I hate being threatened the most in my life. Choked by him, Chiu Junjio could no longer breathe. Her face was flushed and she stared at Hua Jinyao with wide eyes in disbelief. You dare, there's nothing I don't dare to do. Hua Jinyao sneered. His eyes were cold, sharp, and vicious. I don't have the habit of hitting women. But if I were to strangle you right now and throw you out of this window. When the time comes, do you think others will believe you if you say that you failed to woo me and committed suicide by jumping off a building? Chiu Junjio was frightened by him. Her entire face turned pale. You can't, you lunatic, it's good that you know. Hua Jinyao let go of her. Chiu Junjio's body went limp and she fell to the ground. He looked down at her coughing non-stop and said coldly, Miss Chiu, let me remind you. If I were you, I would behave myself and keep a low profile. You also said that our two families are working together. Since we're working together, it's better not to cause trouble for the other party. Don't even think about the previous project. If you know your place, don't mess with my wife, and don't mess with me. In future projects, we may have more opportunities to cooperate. As he spoke, Hua Jinyao squatted down and stared at Chiu Junjio's face. Miss Chiu is such a smart person, you should know how to choose, right? Chiu Junjio took a long time to recover. When she looked at Hua Jinyao again, she felt as if she was looking at a demon from hell. Chapter 338. Chiu Junjio quickly stood up. Her hands and feet were a little weak. She nodded repeatedly. I got it. Please. Huaji now took a step back with a calm face. Remember to say hello to Mr. Chiu for me. Chiu Junjio nodded and left as if she was escaping. After she left, Huaji now straightened his clothes and returned to his seat to deal with the rest of the work calmly. When Su Qingsang came out of the hospital, she saw Huaji now waiting for her with a bouquet of roses in a very high-profile way. She was shocked. She looked around and found that many people were looking in his direction. She was embarrassed. What are you doing? Su Qingsang quickly walked forward and wanted to push him into the car immediately. I'm picking you up from work. Huaji now smiled brightly and put the bouquet of roses in front of Su Qingsang. Flowers for a beauty. Why are you giving me flowers? Su Qingsang took the roses from his hand. What day is it? Can't I give you flowers if it's not a special day? Huaji now put his arms around her waist. Honey, it's not good for you to think like that. Su Qingsang stepped back a little and stared at Huaji now's face. There was a touch of playfulness on her beautiful face. Really? Why do I feel that being unaccountably solicitous is a thief? Honey. Huaji now looked at Su Qingsang deeply. There was a flash of hurt in his eyes. Do you have so little confidence in yourself? All right, I'm joking. Su Qingsang bravely leaned forward and kissed him on the chin. Thank you. I like it very much. They got in the car and Huaji now told her about his arrangements. The plane tickets have been booked. The day after tomorrow morning. The itinerary is also arranged. When you get there, there will be a tour guide who understands Chinese with you. Okay. Su Qingsang looked at Huaji now with obvious gratitude in her eyes. Thank you. Huaji now smiled and his eyes were obviously happy. You're welcome. I'll personally receive the gift tonight. Su Qingsang blushed again. Huaji now couldn't be serious for more than 3 minutes. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qinghui's assistant and gently knocked on the table. Are you sure he hasn't been acting strangely recently? No. The assistant shook his head. President Su has been busy with the cooperation project with Tianyu Group recently. Originally, one of them was given to the Chou family, but it was given to Tianyu, so Mr. Su has been very busy recently. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. In front of her was the financial report of the Li Group for the latest quarter. The increasing figures on the report also proved Su Qinghui's ability. A few days ago, a few downstream partners invited Mr. Su to a meal. But this kind of meal is very common. The assistant arranged the dinner and left after showing up. Therefore, he didn't know that Su Qinghui had left first. You can leave first. Li Qianxue felt that something was wrong. By the way, if anything happens to President Su, remember to let me know. Yes. The assistant had been trained by old Master Li. Later, because Su Qinghui had no one he could use, he gave it to him. After going to Su Qinghui's side, he could be considered to have helped Su Qinghui wholeheartedly. But occasionally, Li Qianxue would call him to ask some unimportant things. Naturally, he also knew not to offend either side. He knew what could be said and what couldn't be said. Because of this, Su Qinghui had kept this assistant. Chapter 339. Li Qianxue stared at the financial statement and thought about Su Qinghui's performance over the past 2 decades. Putting aside the fact that he didn't love her and had never touched her. He was almost a good husband. He didn't fool around and didn't fool around. He worked hard and was very resourceful. More importantly, Su Qinghui had never sought any benefits that didn't belong to him. He had no extra expenses in the past few years except for normal social activities and normal expenses. Also, for so many years, Su Qinghui had never used his position in the Li's group to do anything shameful. What he was getting now was what he deserved through his hard work, normal dividends and salary. She used to worry that Su Qinghui would marry her and agree to be with her to get revenge. Maybe he would do something to the Li group. However, Su Qinghui didn't. Not only did he not, but he also worked hard to bring the Li group to a higher level. As time went by, not only did old Master Li admire him more and more. Even she began to relax and no longer had the doubts she had at the beginning. Li Qianxue rubbed her eyebrows and comforted herself. Maybe she had heard wrong that day, or maybe Su Qinghui was dreaming. Su Qinghui hadn't shown anything wrong for more than 20 years. She thought she might be overthinking. Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping got on the plane. Hu Jiniao sent them to the airport early that morning. It wasn't the first time Xiang Kaiping had gone abroad, but it was the first time she felt so excited. Qingsang. Have you been to Japan? No. Su Qingsang shook her head and looked at the excitement and expectation on Xiang Caiping's face. It's my first time too. I've actually been there once. Xiang Kaiping thought of the time when she started her own business. I had a lot of employees at that time. Some of them did well, and the company decided to reward them. They were asked to travel abroad. I went with them a few times. Mom, the benefits in your company are so good. Su Qingsang held her hand and was getting used to being close to Xiang Kaiping. You've been there already. Is it not fresh? How can it be? Xiang Kaiping shook her head. We didn't know anything at that time. We went around and didn't know anything. Then you have to have fun this time, Mom. Let go. Sure. Xiang Kaiping patted Su Qingsang's hand. As long as I'm with you, I'll be happy even if I don't have to play. Mom. Su Qingsang was touched. She put her face on Xiang Caiping's shoulder. All right. It will take some time to fly to Japan. You should sleep for a while. Shall I ask the stewardess to bring you a blanket? It's okay, I'll do it myself. You should also rest for a while. Xiang Kaiping was touched by her daughter's thoughtfulness. She was more and more glad that she had impulsively chosen to come to Lin City to acknowledge Su Qingsang. Otherwise, how could they have had such a reunion? 2 days later, Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang checked into a famous hot spring hotel in Nagoya. The environment here was elegant and peaceful. According to the tour guide, the guests had to be booked a long time in advance. They were very lucky to be able to come. Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping looked at each other and smiled. They were both quite satisfied with Hu Jiniao's arrangement. Especially after seeing the rooms inside, as well as the hot spring room at the back. Xiang Kaiping really felt that her daughter had a good taste in men, much better than her. After looking around with his companion, the two of them returned to their room. Chapter 340. This time, Su Peijian was accompanying Luo Meishan and Song Yoha, so all the itinerary was arranged by them. When they arrived at the hot spring hotel, Su Peijian finally smiled. I've been to this hot spring hotel before. The environment isn't bad. Su Peijian glanced at Qiu Junjiu. This trip had nothing to do with Qiu Junjiu, but for some reason, when she heard that they were going to Japan, she asked to come along. In order to wait for her, they even set off a day later. However, when he stepped out of the house, he realized that Qiu Junjiu had been daydreaming for some reason. Junjiao, what's wrong? Although it was impossible for Su Peijian and Qiu Yanbo to be together, she and Qiu Junjiu had been friends for many years. She showed concern on her face. Nothing. Chiu Junjiu was a little annoyed. She was really frightened by Hu Jiniao that day. She didn't recover for 2 or 3 days. The feeling of being so close to the Grim Reaper and thinking that he was really going to die was really terrible. She had suffered such a big loss, but she couldn't do anything to Hu Jiniao. Even Qiu Yanbo had told her not to go against Su Qingsang. Listen to this. Is this what a brother is saying to his sister? Wasn't it just for a project? Hu Jiniao could give the project to someone else for Su Qingsang's sake. Why did Qiu Yanbo only ask her to endure? If there's nothing else, let's go back to the room. Put your luggage down. You can take your time to read the rest. Su Peixian's patience had never been very good. This group of people would travel with a lot of luggage. In the past, people would help her with these things, but this time, because a few of her friends came out together, she had to do it herself. The others didn't have any objections. After completing the procedures, they returned to their rooms to rest. The hot spring hotel only had 2 floors. There were not many rooms, but each and every one of them was very elegant. Su Qingsang and Xiang Caiping's room was on the 2nd floor. From there, they could see a small garden at the back. Behind the garden was the hot spring. Every hot spring pool was surrounded and divided into 2 areas for men and women. Mom, do you want to rest for a while? If you don't want to rest, we'll go down to eat. We'll soak in the hot spring tonight. There's no need to rest. We've been in the car for so long this afternoon. You should be hungry. Let's go eat something, then come back for the hot spring. Yeah. Su Qingsang nodded. Japan was not a big place. Although it was a long drive, it was actually not tiring. The 2 of them casually packed up their things and went downstairs. At the same time, Su Peixian and the others had returned to their respective rooms. Su Qingsang and Xiang Caiping went to have dinner together. Then, they went to the hot spring pool that they had booked beforehand. The surroundings were so quiet that Su Qingsang could only hear the sound of their movements in the small pool. Xiang Caiping looked at Su Qingsang. Ever since she came, she had felt that Su Qingsang was too thin. Now that the mother and daughter were soaking in the hot spring with so little clothes on, they realized that their daughter wasn't skinny at all. She had all the places that were supposed to have flesh, and she actually looked very voluptuous. Fortunately, it wasn't like her. She had the typical petite figure of a southern woman. She was a little thin and not voluptuous. Mom, what are you looking at? Su Qingsang turned around and found that Xiang Caiping had been staring at her. Even though she was her own mother, she still felt shy being stared at like that. Chapter 341. Yes. Su Qingsang glanced at her phone. She hadn't received Hu Jiniao's call today. Maybe he's busy. Xiang Caiping had learned a little about Hu Jiniao's identity. He was indeed very busy. He often had to work overtime, socialize, and deal with a lot of things. Speaking of which, you've been married for half a year, right? Do you plan to have children? Xiang Caiping didn't think that having children would make a marriage stronger, but Su Qingsang was over 25 years old. At this age, it was the best time to have a child. No. Su Qingsang shook her head. Her smile was a little unnatural. It's still early. There's no rush. Ever since Hu Jiniao found out that she was taking birth control pills, he had been taking precautions. That was the tacit understanding between them. They both felt that it wasn't a good time to have children. Since that was the case, they would have children later. Seeing her like that, Xiang Caiping suddenly thought of a possibility. Qingsang, you don't want children because of my relationship with your father, do you? Of course not. Su Qingsang denied without thinking. I just feel that I'm still young and don't want to have children so soon. Xiang Kaiping glanced at her and didn't say anything, but she knew that Su Qingsang wasn't telling the truth. She must have done it because of her, because Su Qingsang felt that she was an illegitimate daughter. Her biological father treated her like that, and she, as a mother, wasn't by her side before. Xiang Kaiping felt a little sad. She didn't know where to start. She lowered her head and covered the tears in her eyes with the heat of the hot spring. Su Qingsang didn't know if Xiang Kaiping believed her. She wanted to explain more, but Xiang Kaiping already looked up at her with a faint smile. This hot spring is quite comfortable. Didn't the waiter say there was scented tea? I want to have a drink. Do you want one? Let me get it. Su Qingsang got up to serve Xiang Kaiping the scented tea as she spoke. Seeing that Xiang Kaiping believed her, she didn't mention it for a while. Although it was comfortable to soak in the hot spring, they couldn't stay in it forever. Xiang Kaiping was used to going to bed early, so they got up early and went back to their room to rest. Not long after they returned to their room, Su Peijian and the others left their room to soak in the hot spring. Xiang Kaiping went to bed early, but Su Qingsang couldn't fall asleep. In the past 2 days, Wu Jinyao would call her every day, but today, so much time had passed, and Wu Jinyao hadn't contacted her. Su Qingsang turned over and found that it was almost 11 o'clock at night. If Wu Jinyao didn't call, she would go to bed. As soon as she thought that, her phone screen lit up. Looking at Wu Jinyao's name on the screen, Su Qingsang quickly turned off the volume. She turned around and found that Xiang Kaiping was still asleep. She quickly got up and went to the bathroom with her phone. You picked up the phone so quickly. What? Didn't you sleep? I was just about to sleep. Su Qingsang's voice unconsciously softened. What about you? Why are you so late? I'm working overtime. In fact, Wu Jinyao had said that he would go to Japan, but after he returned to Rong City, he was entangled with a lot of things. He was still working overtime in the company. I wanted to come to Japan to look for you, but I might not be able to come so soon. It's okay, I'm having a good time with my mom. If you're going to work, you don't have to come. We'll come back on our own in a few days. Su Qingsang could understand that work was more important. But she was more or less disappointed. Chapter 342. Wu Jinyao really didn't have time these days, not only because of the company's business. Hui Yifan and Hui Yang had been restless during this period. He wasn't afraid of them, but Hu Mingguang liked those 2 nephews and always gave them opportunities again and again. Then have fun. Go where and what you want to do. Talk to that girl directly. I know, I will. Su Qingsang heard that Wu Jinyao sounded a little tired. Are you very tired? I think your voice is a little hoarse. You have to rest. Don't tire yourself out. Thank you for your concern, wife. I will. Wu Jinyao looked at the time as he spoke. It was exactly 11 o'clock. He suddenly said, Happy New Year. What? Tomorrow is New Year's Day. Japan is an hour earlier than China. So it should be New Year's Day now. Happy New Year. Su Qingsang was stunned. It was so quiet here that she had forgotten. Today was the last day of the year. Happy New Year to you too. Wu Jinyao seemed to be very satisfied. I should be the first person to say hello to you in the new year, right? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. Do you want me to call you at 12 and be the first person to say hello to you? No need. Go to bed early. Otherwise, how can you have the energy to play tomorrow? Okay. He was always so considerate. Su Qingsang really felt warm in her heart. Hua Jinyao saw Yang Wenchang come in with a document with a serious expression. He made a gesture and spoke to Su Qingsang on the other end of the phone in a very low voice. It's getting late. You should rest. Okay. You too. After hanging up, the gentleness on Hua Jinyao's face completely disappeared. He stared at Yang Wenchang with burning eyes. How's the investigation going? Is there any result? Yang Wenchang took a few steps forward and put the document in front of Hua Jinyao. President Hua, I've already checked, but there seems to be some discrepancy. What discrepancy? Take a look first. You'll know after reading it. Hua Jinyao took the document from his hand. After casually flipping through a few pages, his eyes suddenly became sharp. President Hua. Yang Wenchang was a little nervous by his expression. Hua Jinyao waved his hand and said, Go do something for me. Yang Wenchang listened to his instructions, nodded, then turned around and left. Hua Jinyao turned around and looked at the night sky outside the window. His eyes were deep. Su Qingsang went to bed soon after receiving Hua Jinyao's call. Early in the morning, she followed Xiang Kaiping out to eat the specialty noodles of a nearby noodle restaurant. After they finished eating, they listened to the tour guide introduce the fun places nearby. Su Qingsang nodded. Just as she was about to get into the car, she remembered that she had forgotten to bring her phone. I'm going back to get my phone. Su Qingsang glanced at her companions and Xiang Kaiping. Wait for me here. I'll be down soon. Do you want me to accompany you? I can go get it for you. Mom, I'm not a kid. I'm crossing a road with a cell phone. Wait for me, I'll be there soon. Su Qingsang hurriedly ran into the hotel room to get her phone. When she came out, she was in a hurry. She closed the door and walked downstairs. At the same time, someone just turned the corner and walked in her direction. The person's footsteps were not fast, but Su Qingsang's were. As a result, they bumped into each other. Su Qingsang took 2 steps back. Before she could steady herself, she heard a somewhat unhappy female voice. Chapter 343. Do you know how to walk? The sharp voice spoke in Japanese. Su Qingsang didn't understand the first sentence. Her English was good, but she had never learned Japanese. She couldn't understand the language, so she instinctively apologized in English. When he raised his head, he saw an extremely familiar face. It's you. Qiu Junjiu thought of Hua Jinyao's murderous expression the other day when she saw Su Qingsang. She had never been humiliated like that, nor had she been frightened like that. And all of this was brought to her by Su Qingsang. Qiu Junjiu had planned to let it go and not bring it up again. She didn't expect to meet Su Qingsang here, which reminded her of old and new grudges. His eyes swept over Su Qingsang. Because she was going out to play, Su Qingsang was wearing very casual clothes. She was wearing sneakers and jeans, and a red sweater. The outfit made Su Qingsang look 2 or 3 years younger than usual. He looked like a fresh graduate of a university. Qiu Junjiu narrowed her eyes. She looked at Su Qingsang with displeasure and jealousy. Su Qingsang didn't expect to meet this group of people in Japan. They were all here today, Su Peijian, Qiu Junjiu, Luo Meishan, and Song Yoha. She saw them, and they saw her. The air seemed to freeze for a moment. Su Qingsang blinked and looked at Su Peijian, who was walking behind Qiu Junjiu. She nodded slightly as a greeting. After greeting them, she thought that Xiang Kaiping was still waiting for her, so she prepared to leave. Stop, Qiu Junjiu suddenly called out to Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang stopped and looked at Qiu Junjiu. Qiu Junjiu was looking at her too, with obvious displeasure in her eyes. Su Qingsang felt that her life hadn't changed, but it was hard for the others to get used to the change in her identity. What goes around comes around. This woman, who was once looked down upon and ignored by this group of people, who was almost like a weed, was now suddenly above them. Even if Su Qingsang didn't do anything, the change in her identity was enough to make Qiu Junjiu and the others uncomfortable. Is there anything else? Su Qingsang was in a hurry to find Xiang Kaiping. It was New Year's Day, the first day of the year. She was afraid that there would be too many people going to other places if she was late. Yes. When Qiu Junjiu saw Su Qingsang, she thought of herself being strangled by Hu Jinniao. You bumped into me. Shouldn't you apologize? Su Qingsang was too lazy to tell her that she had already said sorry. Instead, he nodded. Sorry, I didn't pay attention to the road. She spoke with sincerity, but Qiu Junjiu only felt that she was being careless. Yes. He wasn't paying attention to where he was going. Now your position is different. If you can walk sideways, how can you see the road with your nostrils facing up? Su Qingsang's brows furrowed slightly when she heard what he said. He moved his lips and was about to retort when he remembered that Xiang Kaiping was still waiting for him. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Are you done? Can I go now? Qiu Junjiu was angered by Su Qingsang's indifferent attitude. Su Qingsang, what are you so proud of? What are you so proud of? How could she be so smug? Su Qingsang didn't understand. Looking at the situation in front of him, he didn't want to waste any more time. Chapter 344. Illegitimate Daughter. Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows slightly. Yes. I'm just an illegitimate daughter. Are you done? If you are, please make way. I'm not done. Qiu Junjiu blocked her way. Can't I? Su Qingsang had wanted to just leave. But looking at the situation in front of her, she couldn't leave right away. Her gaze fell on the four women in front of her. The corridor was only so big. With them blocking the corridor, she couldn't leave even if she wanted to. No. Su Qingsang looked at Qiu Junjiu impolitely. I'm busy now. I don't have time to listen to you. You said that I bumped into you, and I apologized. You're not hurt, so I can't think of any reason for me to stand here and listen to you. Qiu Junjiu blinked. Her usually arrogant face changed several times. She couldn't believe that Su Qingsang dared to argue with her so directly. Sorry, please make way. Ignoring the four women blocking her way, Su Qingsang walked past them and went outside. Qiu Junjiu was furious. Su Peijian, who had been silent all this time, grabbed Su Qingsang's arm when she walked past her. Su Qingsang stopped and turned to look at her. Qiu Junjiu was also looking at her. Their eyes met. Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows inquiringly, but Su Peijian was unhappy. Su Qingsang, I really can't tell that you're like this when you're in power. You disguised yourself so well when you were in the Su family. So well that Su Peijian couldn't tell that Su Qingsang was a fox with sharp claws, not an innocent little rabbit. You're wrong. I'm not pretending. I'm not in power now. Growing up in that kind of environment, if she still wanted to be high profile, it would be even more difficult for her. She understood. She tried to pull her hand out, but Su Peijian held it tightly, which made her frown uncomfortably. Isn't it in power to marry Hu Jinniao? What does it mean to be in power? Su Qingsang, you weren't like this in the past. Su Peijian squeezed Su Qingsang's arm slightly, not letting her break free. Do you know what you were like in the past? As she spoke, Su Peijian moved closer to Su Qingsang's face. I think you're too arrogant and proud now. Have you forgotten how pitiful you used to be? Su Peijian. Let me go. Su Qingsang's other hand clenched, trying to restrain herself. I'll let you go. I just wanted to remind you. No matter how arrogant you are, how proud you are, how cocky you are, you can't hide the fact that you have. You can't hide the fact that you've never been loved or cared for since you were young. You're a pitiful worm. Are you done? Su Qingsang's expression changed slightly. If you're done, then let me go. I'm not done. The calmer Su Qingsang was, the angrier Su Peijian became. Su. Spe Su Pihen more. Su Qingsang. Why could Su Qingsang marry Hu Jinyao and make Qiu Yanbao miss her so much? If Su Qingsang hadn't married Hu Jinyao, if she had still been a pitiful illegitimate daughter that no one cared about, why would Qiu Yanbao even spare a glance at her? Do you remember? You cried and called me mom. You wanted to call her mom too. But my mom ignored you. What happened to you? You were crying in your room, weren't you? Right? Chapter 345. Ever since I was young. You could only watch Yusin and I enjoy motherly and fatherly love. What about you? What about you? Have you forgotten that your mother didn't want you and abandoned you? My father didn't like you and didn't want you. If my mother didn't pity you, you would have been thrown out of the Su family. If I had kept you in the Su family, you would have been thrown out long ago and died in some corner of the world. Why are you being so arrogant in front of us? Qiu Zhenjiu finally heaved a sigh of relief. Luo Meishan and Song Yoha watched the scene in front of them without saying a word. However, the three of them had the same satisfaction in their eyes. They were watching a good show. Su Peijian. Su Qingsang didn't care about the others. Her eyes, which had always been clear and indifferent, were cold at this time. Are you done? Not enough. Su Peijian had been holding back her anger. She just wanted to vent it. Let me tell you, you are not only an illegitimate daughter. Your mother is a mistress. No matter how arrogant you are, you can't hide the fact that your mother is a mistress. Su Qingsang took a deep breath and raised her hand to slap Su Peijian's face. However, a hand was faster than her. The slap not only shocked Su Peijian and the others, but also Su Qingsang. Her hand hadn't fallen yet. She turned around and found Xiang Kaiping was there. She didn't know how long she had been listening, but her face was red. Her hand was still in the air, and her breathing was heavy. Her wrinkled eyes stared at Su Peijian with hatred. Although she wasn't young, she had suffered a lot. The slap was hurried, fast, and hard. Su Peijian didn't have time to react before she was hit. There was an obvious 5-finger mark on her face. Su Peijian was dumbfounded by the immense pain on her face. She stared at the woman who had appeared out of nowhere. You, who do you think you are? How dare you hit me? She had focused all her attention on Su Qingsang last time and had only glanced at Xiang Kaiping. She felt that she looked familiar but couldn't remember. Luo Meishan and Song Yoha remembered. Wasn't this woman the one who tried on clothes with Su Qingsang last time? Xiang Kaiping was a little anxious when she didn't see Su Qingsang. Although they were in the hotel, it was impossible for anything to happen. However, as a mother who had been separated from her daughter for many years, she couldn't help but feel worried. Therefore, after waiting for a few minutes and not seeing Su Qingsang, she informed her companion and came up to look for Su Qingsang. However, she didn't expect to hear Su Peijian's voice before she went upstairs. Every word she said was like a needle that pierced Xiang Caiping's heart. Her heart ached so much that she couldn't breathe. Unbeknownst to her, her daughter had been ignored by her biological father and looked down upon by her half-sister. Being put in a difficult position by his biological father's spouse. She had been hiding in Rome City all this time. She had always thought that Su Qinghui would take good care of her daughter and treat her daughter well. How big of a mistake had she made? The self-blame that she had already suppressed crushed her once again. She felt that she was unforgivable. She even felt that no matter what she did in this life, she would never be able to make it up to Su Qingsang. Her mind was full of thoughts about what she would do in the future and how to make it up to Su Qingsang. She heard Su Peijian say that she was a mistress. Chapter 346. Xiang Caiping had slapped Su Peijian very hard. She still felt that it was not enough. Who do you think you are? Ha! Xiang Caiping was not as gentlemanly as Su Qingsang. She grabbed Su Peijian without thinking. Her eyes were unprecedentedly gloomy. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to scold my daughter? What happened to your upbringing? Is this what your parents taught you? You. Su Peijian's face was still hurting. She couldn't even cover her face when Xiang Caiping grabbed her. She just looked at the woman and understood the meaning behind her words. Her daughter. Who? Su Qingsang. How did Su Qingsang become her daughter? Before Su Peijian could think it through, Xiang Caiping couldn't bear it anymore. She couldn't let it go. The emotions that had been stuck in her heart for so many years seemed to have an outlet. She grabbed Su Peijian's hand and didn't let her break free. Who are you calling a mistress? Who do you think is a mistress? Let me tell you. I'm not a mistress. The mistress is your mother. Your mother, Li Qinxue, is the mistress. She stole my man. She shamelessly set up your father and had sex with him. That's how they got married. Su Peijian had never heard of this. She widened her eyes and looked at Xiang Caiping in shock. You're talking nonsense. I'm talking nonsense. You can go home and ask Li Qinxue. Who is the mistress? Who shamelessly stole someone else's man? Xiang Caiping shook off Su Peijian's hand and took a deep breath. She turned to Su Qingsang. Qingsang, are you okay? Su Qingsang shook her head gently. Mom, I'm fine. She stepped forward to help Xiang Caiping. Her eyes were complicated. She was very happy that Xiang Caiping was standing up for her. However, she was a little worried. She had spent a lot of time to stop Xiang Caiping from thinking about what had happened to her. After Su Peijian's antics, Xiang Caiping's self-blame and discomfort would probably not go away for a long time. Qiu Junjiu and the others were stunned by the scene in front of them. Everyone else looked at Xiang Caiping and her daughter blankly. Even Qiu Junjiu, who was usually sharp-tongued, was shocked by this turn of events. That's good. Xiang Caiping couldn't take this lying down. She turned around abruptly and glared at Su Peijian. Miss Su. Miss Su, I'm warning you. There are people who want Qingsang. She is my most precious daughter. In the future, please watch your words. If there is a next time, I won't be polite. After saying that, she took Su Qingsang's hand and was about to leave. Su Qingsang pulled her hand back, patted her shoulder, and walked to Su Peijian. Qingsang. Firstly, I'm not arrogant. Whether it's in the past or now, I'm only doing what I think I can and can do. I see it I, Su. Can I. Jing. Xiai Su, Jeaner, Shi, Xiai Su, Silly Shi, You. Shi, You. Youth Su. You. I sincerely hope that we can mind our own business. It's better for you and for me, don't you think? After saying this, she held Xiang Caiping's hand and left. Chapter 347. She had always been pampered by Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue since she was a child. Except for the occasional annoyance with Su Qingsang, her life had always been smooth sailing. But recently, she had kicked a steel plate because of Su Qingsang. Today, she had been slapped hard in the face. And the person who had slapped her was Su Qingsang's mother. The mistress, between her mother and her father. How could Su Peixian take this lying down? What shocked her even more was Xiang Caiping's nonsense. How dare she say that Li Qianxue was a mistress? How dare she? She had lost her usual arrogance and composure. The demeanor that Li Qianxue had carefully cultivated had disappeared without a trace. She just hated it. She hated it to the core. Peixian. Qiu Junjiu and the others looked at her worriedly. Are you okay? Su Peixian was panting. Her face was cold and she couldn't hear the voices of her friends behind her. Peixian. Qiu Junjiu called her again worriedly. Xiang Caiping had really gone too far today. How dare she hit her? I'm fine. Su Peixian's words were almost squeezed out from between her teeth. The others looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Peixian, your face. Why don't we go back and apply some medicine? Su Peixian didn't refute. She kept adjusting her breathing and finally nodded coldly. Qiu Junjiu and the others followed her back to her room. Su Peixian's hands were tightly clasped together. Her eyes had never been so gloomy. Su Qingsang and Xiang Caiping were silent all the way until they got into the car. Seeing that both of them didn't look too good when they got into the car, Yumei was smart enough not to ask. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Caiping's pale face and sighed softly. Mom, you didn't have to do this. Because Yumei was there, she spoke in Lin City's dialect. Xiang Caiping couldn't speak. She kept her head down. Her hand was clenched into a fist on her knee, and her other hand was placed on her chest, pressing it tightly. Su Qingsang knew that she was trying to control her emotions. She wanted to comfort her but didn't know where to start. In the end, she put her arms around her shoulders and said, Mom, I'm fine. It was true. It was all in the past. Those things have long passed. Xiang Caiping still didn't speak, but Su Qingsang saw tears fall from her eyes as she kept her head down. She felt a little helpless, a little sad, and a little touched. Actually, Dad isn't as bad as she said. Su Qingsang knew that any explanation would be useless, but she still wanted to make her feel better. At least for all these years, I haven't been cold or hungry. Although I can't ask for more, it's already much better than the children of ordinary families. Xiang Caiping still did not speak. She could not open her mouth. She was afraid that if she opened her mouth, she would burst into tears. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes and finally picked a few relaxing things to tell her. Mom, look, we're going to play now. How can I have fun if you're like this? Xiang Caiping waved her hand. She needed some time to calm herself down. Su Qingsang knew that it was useless to persuade her, so she hugged her mother tightly and leaned her face on her shoulder. Mom, I'm really fine. This is good, really good. Chapter 348. Moreover, if it weren't for the Su family's cold treatment for so long, she wouldn't have achieved what she had today. 25 years old, a medical graduate student, planning to take the medical master's exam. She had been working hard since her internship in her 3rd year. Now, she was a talent valued by both the hospital and the department. Xiang Kaiping stopped crying, but her breathing was still unstable. Her throat was choked. That kind of emotion couldn't be comforted by a few words from Su Qingsang. No matter how good Su Qingsang was now, it couldn't make up for Su Qinghui's neglect of her in the past. It also couldn't make her forget that he abandoned her with a clear conscience. She was the original sin. Yumi didn't quite understand what they were talking about. After thinking about it, she leaned over from the front seat and asked in a low voice, "Qingsang, is your mother okay?" "She's fine." Su Qingsang shook her head and signaled for Yumi to stop asking. Yumi was a very famous escort in Japan. Not only did she know Chinese and English, but she was also very familiar with the customs and habits of many countries. Seeing Su Qingsang's look, she didn't continue asking. It took Xiang Kaiping a few minutes to recover from that kind of emotion. However, it was still useless. She was still depressed and disappointed. Su Qingsang knew that she couldn't persuade her, so she didn't want to. However, she began to think about something else. This hot spring hotel was very famous, but she didn't expect to meet Su Peijian and the others. The conflict today was not within her expectations. Su Peijian probably didn't expect to meet her either. She didn't know if they would leave after that. If they didn't leave, it would be troublesome to meet them again. Maybe she should mention to Xiang Kaiping and change to another hotel. With that thought, Su Qingsang began to ask Yumi if there were any other hotels nearby that were similar to this one. Yumi knew this place very well. She began to introduce them. Xiang Kaiping, who had been depressed, suddenly raised her head at that moment. "Why should we change hotels?" "We're not changing hotels." "Mom. Why should we change hotels? They should be the ones changing hotels." After what happened just now, Xiang Kaiping had a lot of imagination. She now thought of Su Qingsang as a poor little girl who had been oppressed by the Su family. Even if Su Qingsang promised her that she was doing well, she wouldn't believe it. She would only think that Su Qingsang was lying to her. "All these years, you've always given in to them, but how did they treat you?" Xiang Caiping's voice was so soft that only Su Qingsang, who was sitting next to her, could hear it. She could still clearly hear the anger in her voice. He sighed helplessly and said, "Mom, I've been living well all these years." She put aside the desires she had when she was young and the indifference of the Su family. She was well-fed and well-clothed, so she was not short of money. She used to want to work to get rid of the Su family, but later Su Qinghui bought her a house, so she gave up. She put all her heart and soul into her studies, so her grades were better than the average person's. "It's really good. Don't lie to me." Xiang Kaiping would not listen to her explanation. She had already stubbornly decided on what she believed. Seven looked at Yumi helplessly. "Is it going to take a long time?" "Soon." Yumi knew that her role had come. She turned around and began to introduce the place they were going to next. Chapter 349. Su Qingshuang really didn't mind having conflicts with them, but Su Peijian was Su Qinghui's most beloved daughter. She couldn't guarantee that Su Qinghui wouldn't cause trouble for Xiang Kaiping because of that slap. It was better to have less trouble than more trouble. To Su Qingsang's relief, when they returned to the hot spring hotel that night, Su Peijian and the others had already left. She confirmed with the hotel owner again and again that they had indeed left. That was good. It would be best if they didn't run into each other. However, thinking about the slap that Xiang Kaiping gave Su Peijian, Su Qingsang didn't know why, but she felt a little uneasy. After thinking about it, she didn't tell Hu Jiniao about meeting Su Peijian. When Hu Jiniao called again in the evening, she only told him about some interesting things that happened during the day. Hu Jiniao was obviously very busy. She could even hear the sound of typing on the keyboard on the other end of the phone. After repeatedly reminding Hu Jiniao to take care of himself, Su Qingsang hung up. Seeing Xiang Kaiping sitting by the window, Su Qingsang put her arm around her shoulder and said, "Mom, let's go. Didn't you say you were tired from shopping? Let's go to the hot spring again today." "I don't want to go." She wasn't in the mood for the whole day. "Mom, just think of it as keeping me company." "Okay." Since Su Qingsang said so, Xiang Kaiping had no choice but to leave. She seemed to be fine on the surface, but Su Qingsang knew that Xiang Kaiping wouldn't get over it so easily. She didn't want to explain more. She would try her best to make Xiang Kaiping have fun and be happy for the rest of the trip. On the 3rd of New Year's Day, Su Qingsang's holiday ended. She had to work tomorrow. She was flying back home early in the morning. However, when she opened the door and was about to leave, she saw Hu Jiniao standing at the door and about to knock. "It's you." Su Qingsang was surprised by his sudden appearance. "Why are you here?" Hu Jiniao smiled and reached out to hold her in his arms. He hugged her very tightly. Su Qingsang buried her face in his chest. The weather in Japan was getting colder on New Year's Day. Hu Jiniao's clothes were still cold, but Su Qingsang felt very warm and touched. After hugging her enough, Hu Jiniao held her face and kissed her lips. An extremely long and lingering kiss. When Su Qingsang was almost out of breath and her legs were weak, he finally let go of her. However, they were still standing close to each other with their foreheads touching hers. "Did you miss me?" Su Qingsang blushed a little. She looked at him and nodded slightly. "Yes. Honey, I missed you too." Hu Jiniao hugged her again. "Are you going to check out now?" "Yes." Su Qingsang nodded, suddenly realizing that Xiang Kaiping was still in the room. Sure enough, she was standing behind them with a smile on her face. Su Qingsang blushed even more. When she saw Hu Jiniao, she forgot that Xiang Kaiping was leaving with her. You haven't told me why you're here. Didn't I say I would accompany you to Japan?" In the end, he had too much work to do and was only able to finish it last night. After sleeping for 2 hours, he flew over. "I can't play with you, but I can take you home." Su Qingsang bit her lip. Her eyes fell on Hu Jiniao's face, as if only then did she realize that he didn't look well. He looked a little tired, and his eyes were faintly bloodshot. There were dark circles under his eyes. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.